The main character experienced betrayal from the man she trusted the most. She gave Fabian everything, all of herself to the last. And in response, all she got was that he abandoned her in a cold dungeon. She sincerely believed that she would no longer be alone. It seemed that she would be able to stay by his side because he was the only man she could rely on. And the main character of this game world, Fabian Ignis, is a tall, handsome guy with fiery red hair. One day, he approached her and said that her magic had proven very useful. The main character's name was June Carentia. The girl replied that with her support magic she could only help from afar. But Fabian assured her that there was no need to worry about that. He said that their meeting was a real stroke of luck and looked at her with a slight smile. This confused June, and she felt surprised and slightly excited. Fabian added that he could not imagine the expedition without her. He sincerely hoped that she would help him in the battle with the Demon King, and will remain with him until the very end. She replied that of course she would be there because she liked being with him. She promised to be his strength. That's what she always said. But now she couldn't believe that he really wouldn't come to save her. There was no one else to rely on. June was left here alone. Fabian knew what situation she would be in, and he still left her. She didn't understand why it was necessary to give hope if it could be so easily abandoned later. Suddenly, a strange sound was heard, and June turned around and saw a monster. The monster was several times larger than her. She didn't know what to do. The expedition had no problems with such enemies, but for a support mage, this was an impossible task. She simply didn't have the strength to defeat him, so she decided to run away. But the monster turned out to be too strong and huge. It hit her with its hand, and she fell. She wanted him to leave her alone with all her might, and threw a stone at him. The monster was even taken aback for a moment by the fact that she tried to engage in battle with him. Then June realized that the enhancement had not worked on the stone, and it had not even left a scratch. Sadness overwhelmed her again, and she remembered Fabian. She felt especially sad because she even sacrificed her hand for him. She sincerely hoped that he would still appear and save her. Suddenly, she noticed that something strange had happened to the monster. At first she thought it was Fabian who had come. A gentleman approached her and remarked that it was rather strange. After all, in this dungeon, there was a man who was not able to cope with a Balrog. June didn't understand who he was and was scared. In fact, the leader of the Dark Knights, Mayor Nox, stood before her. She began to explain that the villagers forced her to come here. The Lord said that this was similar to human sacrifice. Some still have not abandoned such customs. She couldn't even imagine that she would meet him here. He said she was incredibly lucky to have stumbled upon him. June survived, but it was too early to relax. Before she would have believed in luck, but now she truly understood this world. It certainly wasn't luck, the leader just suggested waiting for the others. She couldn't believe that Mayor Nox would become a true demon king and fill the world with nothing but monsters. But this leader decided that perhaps he should tame this monster himself. He also noted that not dying from the first attack of such a monster was too much. Since he was here, she decided to at least try using magic. The gentleman turned around and realized that it was a spell of strengthening. With her magical support, he still managed to defeat the monster. After that, he approached the girl and said that he now understood how unusual she was. He took her hand, which made her very embarrassed. She wasn't supposed to show her powers, but it had become a habit. The gentleman said that being abandoned without support and help is really scary. She apologized and suggested that they just forget about it. She said that he didn't really need help. He tried to explain something to her, but she didn't understand him at all. He asked if she would like to join his expedition. He told her to become his, but the girl could not understand what this unexpected turn of events was. Maybe she just got an offer from the final boss himself. The atmosphere in their camp remained tense and oppressive. June didn't know what to do now. She didn't even understand how she ended up next to Mayor, even though she was with those who knew her. He said he would ask June again. He asked again if she wanted to join the Dark Knights expedition. June wanted to refuse immediately, but she didn't know how he might react. So she simply thanked him for the offer and asked if he could give her some time to think about it. But Meyer didn't understand at all why she was hesitating, because the Dark Knights were the best choice. He was indeed right, and she knew it perfectly well. The Dark Knight squad is commanded by the strongest warrior, Archduke Knox. This is the best expedition group that everyone envies, but she didn't want to join them. Anyone else would have done the same thing in her place if they knew who he really was. Mayor Knox was more than just a strong man. She ended up in the world of the game, the great battle of the Holy Devil, and Jun Carentia is a character from it. The dreaded Duke Knox was also one of the playable characters, and Fabian, who left her, was the main character for whom the player himself had to play. She learned a lot while gathering information about this game, including the fact that the game has a second round. The fake Demon King, cornered in the first round, used a hidden core to reverse time. This is how the second round, a repeat playthrough, began for the player. In the second round, Mayer tried to kill the Demon King to get rid of the curse in his blood, and when the king dies, there's a sudden twist. Meyer was the hidden core. He absorbs the power of the fake and becomes the true Demon King. The battle with the awakened Knox became the real finale of the game. It would be crazy to become his subordinate, given all this, especially since it's the second round now. He'll soon turn into a monster. Mr. Mayer said that he didn't understand why there was any need to whine. There was no better expedition group to find, and no one needed support mages anymore. The girl, of course, agreed that he was right, but that didn't mean she had to choose only this demon. She needed to somehow get rid of him, so she thought about it. She decided to let herself be humiliated in order to convince him, and said that she was very grateful that he saved her. True, even in supporting magic, she wasn't very good, so there wouldn't be much use from her. But the gentleman said that he didn't think so, and the lady remarked that she was simply lucky. Then Mayer admitted that he had indeed been a bit hasty. The lady smiled and thanked him for understanding her. She felt it worked, but the gentleman immediately said he had come up with another outcome. He stated that he wanted to test her skills and then return to the conversation. The girl didn't understand at all what was being discussed. He brought her here again, which made her worry. Mayer told June to stay here, because if she was in no hurry to get out, he would have to do it himself. The girl could not understand how it could be cozy in the dungeon. She really wanted to run away from here. It was full of unpleasant things. From the bench, she saw that he was really leaving. He would recognize her skill if she used magic, but there was no choice. She needed to escape from here, so she used magic anyway. Then, turning around, he saw that she had managed to escape with her help. She climbed up to him, and he was surprised that she was also quick. It wasn't that bad. Both the skills and the movement were fine. He turned to her and said that she was the one he needed. The girl realized that she was really in trouble. It was just a game mechanic. Stat points and skills carried over from the first playthrough, so she stood out a little, but didn't want to join the Dark Knight. The gentleman did not understand why she was so afraid and why she resisted so fiercely. Perhaps she had chosen another expedition. The girl replied that this was not true. After all, this was the first one she had met. Mayer was better off not knowing this, but when he heard that this was her first expedition, he smiled. He asked again if she really still felt affection for Fabian. The girl was very scared and did not understand how he even knew about Fabian. She began to worry, realizing that perhaps he could penetrate other people's minds. June replied that this was not true, and then asked what exactly he was talking about. Mayor Knox calmly stated that he did not like to waste time, so he suggested getting straight to the point of the conversation. It seems he already knows that she has memories of the first playthrough. This caused June to ask how he knew who passed first. Mayer asked with interest what the first round meant. This seemed to him extremely curious. He believed that she was calling the current passage the second. June had accidentally used a game term, and from her behavior, he concluded that she really did remember everything. June was stunned, and he added that she had better not try to deceive him. Even a child could do it more convincingly. June wasn't such a bad actress, and this upset her, but Knox decided to add something. He said that she was not the only one who retained memories. According to him, he noticed her strange behavior from the very beginning. It seems that Fabian Ignis also remembers the first round. June was truly shocked that Mayer knew about this too. She looked at him and realized that he was catching on too quickly. Maybe it was a feature of the final boss. He looked at June and admitted that at first he thought his mind had gone crazy, all because what was happening began to repeat itself over and over again. In a world where everything went in circles, a man appeared who began to act differently. He was informed that the next target of the expedition had already been determined. This man turned out to be Fabian Ignis. He knew that June was stuck in the dungeon and was in danger, but despite this, he chose another place for his expedition. So June realized that there was no point in hoping for him. She was overcome with fear because all this turned out to be true. She remembered how some girl screamed in panic, not knowing what to do. After all, the blow was so strong that it almost tore off Fabian's arm. It was necessary to urgently help, but holy magic did not work. Then June made up her mind. She would sacrifice her hand to save Fabian. The doctor was glad when she saw that everything was okay with his hand. Fabian realized that it was June's magic and thanked her. He looked at the girl and noticed that she was holding her hand. He rushed to her and asked again if she had really transferred the wound to herself. But June just quietly thought that she was okay and asked if she could hear him. She didn't regret anything because now they both could survive. Her arm had already recovered in the second round, so everything was fine. But the sacrifice was in vain because he originally planned to go to another dungeon for the Ring of Flame. This is exactly what she told Mayer. He remarked that if she understood everything so clearly, then why did she still rely on him? Knox thought June just wanted to stay with Ignis's pet. She was surprised to see that he even knew the nickname, but June had no idea that he remembered every little detail of the first playthrough. Although there are some things he still doesn't understand. Fabian's betrayal has nothing to do with her not wanting to join the Dark Knight. And even if he is a bad person, he is still the main character of this world. And Mayer is just the final boss she must destroy. The man sat down next to her and asked her to share, assuring her that he was ready to listen. June replied that she couldn't go that far, but Mayer assured her that everything would be fine. She was the one he needed. He came to this dungeon to save her. When June realized that his presence here was not an accident, it stunned her. Mayer noted that the conversation about the first round has already taken place. Now it's time to choose. He made it clear that she had to make a decision. But June admitted that she didn't quite understand why he was so firm in his intentions. Mayer replied that the reason was that he needed her specifically. He intends to get her at any cost. He wants to destroy the Demon King. Maybe that's it. June wanted to know what his real reason was. She tried to understand his true intention, but Mayer didn't seem to understand what she meant. The girl reminded him that she remembers the first round. And now he says that it's all because of her outstanding abilities. Mayer admitted that this was true, but June objected. She didn't have any abilities then, and he had already decided to save her. The man closed his eyes and said that it seemed to him, no, he was sure, that she was much more valuable than she thought. June didn't quite understand what that was supposed to mean. Even Fabian, with whom she spent so much time, left her, so she couldn't understand where Mayer got such confidence from. She thought he didn't know everything she did in the first round. And I even hoped that he didn't know it. Doesn't know that she tried to kill him. Although she did not rule out that Mayer knew about this. Usually the real Demon King is killed in the second round, but she decided to do it already in the first one. Perhaps she was simply afraid of the upcoming battle. That's why she tried to destroy the hidden core. Mayer Knox himself. Information about a high-level dungeon that Knox couldn't miss quickly reached the Dark Knight's ears. There were too many gaps in all of this, and in the end, it all turned out to be in vain. Everyone blessed the Dark Knights. Mayer Knox guarded the high-level dungeon. One thing after another, June eventually had to give up on killing him. A support mage has no chance against an attack type, especially one that can't be penetrated even in dungeons. Therefore, it is unlikely that he fully understood her plan. Even if he had understood, Mayer could have cut out her entire group at the very beginning. Or he simply wouldn't have saved her in the second round. When he turned to June, she flinched because she was lost in her thoughts. He told her to forget about Fabian, because he was doomed as a hero if he lost such loyal allies as Canyon from the start. It was just terrible. Meyer looked like he hadn't guessed anything, but it was because of him that Fabian would fail. The Demon King would already be dead if it weren't for the hidden core. He simply noted that he wanted to convey a simple idea. It was not her fault. Only Fabian was to blame. She will probably soon understand that the Demon King Fabian will not be defeated. Not this time. June knew he was right. It was clear that Mayer would win. But what's the point if the real king is hiding somewhere? She can't understand why she would serve the future Demon Lord. It would be better to ask Fabian to accept her back into the group. She has pride, but Fabian means a lot to her. He is the protagonist after all, and only he has a chance to kill the Demon King. This means that a happy future is possible only with him. The future with Meyer is shrouded in darkness, and the price of a ghostly chance may be the rejection of a reliable path. Therefore, she does not understand at all how to get out of this hopeless situation. Meyer has better stats, and that excuse won't work, especially when it comes to attacking power. Then only the holy power remains. Meyer is in some way connected to the Demon King. That's why normal attacks don't work on him, unless the king is weakened to a certain level. Nox, like the demon, has a darkness attribute. The Dark Knight's main attack force is the Archduke. But because of this, even 100 hits can cause almost no damage. Only when Fabian's group weakens, the king will Meyer's attacks be effective, and she is offered to deal with him only with the help of Meyer, unless the attribute of darkness suddenly becomes holy. At that moment, she remembered her transformation skill. The attribute could actually be changed to the opposite for a while, and it could work. Almost all the monsters in this world, except for some in special dungeons, belong to the dark attribute. Therefore, the transformation skill is usually not used. But in the case of Meyer, it is a different matter. He can even help defeat the Demon King Fabian, thinking that he got all the information he needed from her, simply got rid of her. Although she only spoke about the first round, where she fought with him, the strategies she proposed were based on the protagonist's characteristics and player observations. But he doesn't know anything about special items or dungeons. Fabian, who threw her, will not cope with the second round. Almost certainly, that's why June said she had one request. The future of this world cannot be left in the hands of Ignis. June really needs to think about what she can do for the real June. She never understood how she ended up in this girl's body. She didn't want this, and therefore she sincerely regretted it. Perhaps it happened at the cost of her own life. That's why she was so worried and decided to fulfill any of her wishes. For example, to live her life as June herself would have lived. But in the end, I could only come up with one way. To live in the shadow of the main character, as befits a support mage, to be his protector. The woman from the past started yelling at her about what she was doing and said that she shouldn't interfere. But June wanted to keep her character's name in the story. This is the only thing that the one who stole this body can do. And at the same time, it is atonement and retribution. June Carentia's name must be recorded in history. After these words, the man laughed. He was surprised because he couldn't even imagine who would think that June was so greedy. It probably looked stupid on his part, but he still agreed and said that her name would be on everyone's lips for a long time, and he would take care of it himself. After all, a participant in a raid on the Demon King is unlikely to be forgotten quickly. Now June had no reason to refuse. She smiled and understood. This is her only chance in life. She needs to survive until the very end to see a world where everyone will be happy. So the girl said she agreed to join the Dark Knight. Mayor Knox smiled. After all, she had been thinking about it for so long. He promised that he would do everything possible to ensure that she did not regret her decision. And he added that he would definitely not be disappointed in her because he wanted to express his gratitude for her courage. If she needed help, of any kind she could come to him at any time. June laughed and said that she was not some high-born person to receive such treatment. But Meyer Knox turned to her and reminded her that he had promised to treat her better than the others, so he suggested that they return to base immediately and discuss the raid on the Demon King. June was surprised that she would not be given time to adapt, but Meyer said that he believed in her strength and was sure that she could cope. The girl noted that she was abandoned in the second round. "It's only stupid Fabian's fault." That's exactly what Meyer said. June didn't think she would ever scold Fabian, along with Meyer, but she smiled anyway. She admitted that Meyer was indeed a fool, but she would not regret her choice. Then Meyer told everyone that this was June Carentia, and from now on she was part of the Dark Knight. He turned to June, who greeted everyone, introducing herself as a support mage. She hoped that she would be able to get along with everyone. Everyone looked puzzled, as expected, but their reaction was understandable. After this, Meyer turned to Axion, who immediately came over. June was very surprised because she saw a familiar face in front of her. The level of magical power could be understood even just by the color of the hair. It was the ace of the Dark Knights, a fire mage named Axion Flam. Meyer said that he and June would now share life and death as colleagues, and he would have to take care of her. But the guy didn't understand why they turned to him, because he was an attack mage. Then the gentleman said that June Carentia was very talented, so she would be appointed as her daughter's vice captain. June was simply horrified. She did not understand why this was so, and asked him again how she should understand it. The gentleman noted that he had said that she would receive better treatment. She thought she would be given a relationship that would be appropriate for a captain, but not a real position. It was strange, but the other was glad about it. But June behaves this way. The lady noticed that she simply understands her limits. That way, she would definitely get into all the history books, so that's what I did. But then he added that if she didn't want it, he would appoint someone else as captain. But June immediately and sharply agreed. Everyone was shocked that she was given such a high title for her multi-support. Maybe she has talents that they don't know about yet. She could say whatever she wanted, but she hadn't expected Meyer to listen to her from the start. He also asked Axion to explain everything to her before he returned. He turned to June and said that he would go to get the results of the dungeon exploration. And if she has any questions, she can ask Axion. June, of course, agreed, but Axion himself did not understand what was happening. He decided to just keep quiet and noted that it was the first time he saw him like this. June was surprised, and the guy noticed that she took his hand, and he didn't say a word. The lady didn't understand what was wrong with that, but Axion said that usually he would have looked at her with disdain and pushed her away, and this time he even smiled. He never personally brought people into the group. We need to try to look at everything from a different perspective. The attack time will be reduced by 2/3. So even a simple soldier has a clear advantage under the influence of this magic circle. June approached him, and he apologized, as this rarely happened, and he was a little upset. June said she wanted to make it clear right away. She had not asked to go on their expedition. He invited her himself, and she wants to tell him about it. Then the guy smiled and said that he already understood and asked for forgiveness if he was rude to her. He seems to regret what he said about the dungeon. It's not the first time they've met, and they had a rather unpleasant conversation earlier. He told the gentleman to think about it himself. He didn't understand how to survive in the dungeon alone for long. He thought it might be a trick of the dungeon, but the master said it was not a trick. She was an ordinary mage, and simply could not get out on her own. Then Axion said that even if she was not a mage, there was still one problem. What if she takes advantage of this situation to pose as a member of the Dark Knight? Then June heard it and almost died of horror, and he says so. She decided that she would not silently listen to this nonsense and wanted to tell Axion everything. She turned to him and came closer to him. She said she was grateful for the help and that there had been a misunderstanding between them, and she doesn't need a Dark Knight, an Archduke, or anything else. She swears by the name of Saint Marianne that she makes no claim to it. This kind of oath is the best guarantee. as Dima says. And she didn't lie. Mayer invited her himself, and then she said that he might not have known the benefit of magicians in support. So he became embarrassed and said that he now understood his mistake and was very grateful that it broadened his horizons. He told her to call him Axion. He is the attack mage of the first Dark Knight team. His relationship turned out to be much better than she expected, so the girl was surprised. The lady thought about the fact that in the first round, Fabian and Mayer often clashed, so there were constant quarrels. And although they may have differences, he is still the best attack mage in the group. It is better to establish a good relationship. She shook his hand and said she had hopes for him. Axion said that he often had to take command in the dungeon, so he could be overly sensitive. It explains why he didn't feel that way when they first met, and she hopes he thinks better of her now. The boy smiled and said that of course he was grateful for her understanding, but he also showed her the villagers. Indeed, they are very grateful to Mayer for saving their settlement, and they have prepared a small celebration in his honor, hoping that the Archduke will honor them with his presence. He tries so hard to appear harmless, so she doesn't know how others will take it, but she understands his intentions well. They want to build a relationship to take advantage of Mayer and the Dark Knight's reputation. Mayer said he had no time for fun, and they were leaving now. The man was surprised and asked him to accept their good intentions, but this is very stupid. The Duke is not one to be distracted from his work. He will not agree so easily. She turned to Axion and said that it was time for them to leave. But suddenly someone turned to her. The girl was surprised when she was called by name. He remarked that he thought she was already dead. The girl was surprised, and he screamed and asked how she had survived. The man approached June and said that she was the only mage in the village, and he believed that she could handle it. June was stunned, and he told her to be sure to close the gate. June told the headman that she was a support mage, not an attack mage, and that she had no chance at all on her own. But they wouldn't close themselves if nothing was done. The headman asked if she wanted the villagers to die. June started calling for her dad and stepmother at the very beginning of the game. Support mage, June found herself alone in the dungeon. It was a pretty weird plot twist, but in fact, she was pushed there by force by her fellow villagers. The woman shouted at her to come in and said that she wanted her brother to die. Even her parents didn't try to stop it, and she immediately understood everything. And now the same people are telling her that she owes them something. They said that she should repay them for taking care of her because they were her family. But June noticed that they weren't even trying to pretend that they were worried about her, and Axion intervened, saying that if she had a family, then he didn't understand why they weren't looking for her. June replied that there was nothing surprising about this. They personally threw her out of the village to sacrifice her, and they hardly expected that she would return alive. The guy was shocked by this. They wanted to calm the anger in the dungeon, or something like that. He couldn't even believe it. June said that she wouldn't go there herself because she wouldn't be able to kill even one monster. Axion was shocked by this. He didn't understand what century they were living in. Doing such terrible, irrational, delirious things was just awful. But the main character decided that it made no difference. She couldn't even imagine what the real June felt at that moment, and she had lived in this terrible village since she was born. So June decided that she wanted to help the hero at any cost. She really wanted the main character, Fabian, to take her with him. The only thing she felt towards her fellow villagers was disgust. Of course, she understood perfectly well what they were up to, and she has the same disgust for her parents. Mama said that she wants to thank the Duke for saving her, but June said that he was busy and her gratitude would be enough. The men decided to let them through, after all, because they were the vice captain's family. Mother said that her gratitude was not enough. They would show her the right examples, but June said it was better to be honest. The stepmother had nothing to be grateful for, and she noted that it was clear that they were not at all happy that she had returned alive. The woman did not understand what kind of stupidity this was. She wanted to make herself a victim and wanted to portray her parents as villains. But June told her parents that they were the ones who pushed her powers into the dungeon, and that's where she almost died. And they decided to pretend that they had forgotten about it. But father told her to just not talk nonsense. He said that they were still a family, so there was no need to be angry. But this irritated June even more. They even call themselves parents, which is very low. Axion said he thought they needed to say goodbye now. The parents were shocked. They did not understand why this was so. And Axion said that June Carentia was now a member of the Dark Knights expedition, and they head to the next dungeon to clear it out. They have no time for nonsense. Her parents were in shock and did not understand whether she was really in this organization and how this was even possible. June pointed out that she really tried, and her father couldn't understand that she did it herself. He assumed that she just asked for it, or that they took anyone. Her stepmother said that if they were looking for new children now, then that was great, and suggested that Evgeny be placed there too. But June said she wasn't going to listen to that nonsense. Stepmother said knights were trained from an early age. She just wanted to add her son, but June said he was really 10 years old. And they really did seem like they were going to send a little kid with a wooden sword on an expedition. June also noted that this would only cause them trouble. That's why she doesn't want to listen to this nonsense anymore. Axion was simply shocked. He told the guards to take the woman and the man away. The woman said that they should let her go because they were family, but Axion said that they should just stop making him laugh. He said he wasn't going to allow it twice, or they thought his words were a joke. He also said that it just seemed to him that Evgen would be more useful to them than June. Father decided that June should stop these people. Axion asked the girl for forgiveness for having to drive away her parents. But June thought it was no big deal because they weren't listening to a word she said anyway. She was grateful he was really cool. Axion said that it was nothing because people's relationships become stronger when they face a common enemy. They were already ready. They were about to leave. Axion asked if the girl had any luggage because they would need to pack that too. But the girl replied that she had no luggage and she was ready. She didn't understand the sad look on Axion's face when he heard this. He looked at her as if she were a child who had nothing to wear. In principle, that was the case. Eugene always received new clothes while growing up, and June got by with only old rags, which of course was discrimination. She spent little time with them in the first round, but in the second, it all became obvious. He told her not to worry. The vice captain is entitled to many things. They will even sew a magic uniform for her. The girl noticed that she already had a uniform, but Axion said that this uniform was not for an ordinary mage and did not stand out, and she was a support mage. When the girl realized that this was true, she said that she was comfortable in this uniform, especially since their specialization can be determined by the color of their hair. In principle, this is true. The more magical power a person has, the brighter the color of his hair. It is immediately obvious that Axion is a strong fire-type mage, and she, the support mage, has pale gray hair. One look made everything clear. Suddenly, someone approached them, and she realized it was Mayer. When she heard his voice, she immediately recognized that it was Mayer. He said that her hair color went very well with the Dark Knight uniform. The girl was touched by the compliment, but was not sure how the uniform looked on her. Axion was in complete shock, and the girl thought that perhaps he meant that the uniform suited everyone from the Dark Knight. She thanked His Highness, but Mayer asked to be called Captain. He reminded her that he was her boss. The girl smiled, realizing that others didn't call him that, but still decided to continue calling him that. Mayer noted that the uniform could be made better, and they would tell the tailor something urgently for her when they returned to base. By the way, he almost forgot that upon his return, he needed to hold a welcoming ceremony. The girl didn't understand what was wrong with her form, and Mayer also noticed that since she asked to prepare a horse, she needed to go with Axion to the stable, and he would help her choose a horse. The girl was surprised, but it was really good news for her. Usually, only the best knights ride on horseback while the rest walk. A horse is not as comfortable as a car, but it is still better than walking. In the first round, June was able to get a horse only halfway through the journey. And now she will ride again. Axion turned to his lordship and asked if he was sure that June could handle it. The gentleman smiled and said that of course he was completely sure of it. Axion noted that he couldn't even imagine that the girl could ride a horse. June said that it was very simple, but Axion added that it was a rather rare skill for an ordinary citizen. June smiled and said that she understood that horses are very valuable animals, so only a small number of people can raise them. Most of them don't even know how to sit in the saddle. June learned while she was on an expedition with Fabian. She couldn't tell Axion about this, so she just said that the captain was short-lived. If he had known that she couldn't handle it, he wouldn't be the type to see the potential of others and use it. Mayer was a control freak, especially on an expedition. He wanted everything to go exactly according to plan, and for spontaneous changes of position to almost never occur. No matter how competent newcomers are, they must start from the very bottom. Elite knights should not try to rise to the top, even if they show high individual abilities. Every change must be approved by Mayer. This is the only way to become an elite Dark Knight. That's why everyone was surprised by her appointment. He forced her to join. She simply saw no other options. Axion also told June that she knows him well, highlighting her feelings. June said that it really is clear at a glance. She doesn't say that she's known him since the first round. She needs to be more careful in her statements in the future. The knights watched as June rode alongside His Highness. Mayer was ahead of everyone. Next to him is Axion. It was immediately obvious who was in the lead here. But June, although she was Fabian's partner, never felt equal to him. They were his childhood friends, close friends. Deka and April. By the way, since they were never equals, it's unclear why June decided that Fabian wouldn't leave her. June decided to just not think about it. Mayer also can't be trusted completely. One betrayal was enough. This time she will draw the line. Mayer is an assistant in destroying the Islas, nothing more. The gentleman said that it was time for them to move. And they began to move. Fellow villagers noticed June and were shocked that she survived. They didn't understand how a support mage was accepted into the Dark Knights. They thought it was just some kind of nonsense. They approached Carenti's family and asked how this happened and if they even knew what was going on. Her parents immediately said they didn't know, and the girl realized that it looked like they would both remain silent. She must be ashamed to talk about the daughter they banished. Mayer asked about land as an introductory gift for June. The girl was surprised and asked what she was even talking about. The gentleman said that she was in such a bad way. With the governor, she was constantly receiving taxes, and you can even change the village headman at any time. And since this is her home village, he can support her. If she wants to create a guild here, he will help her do it. Everyone was in complete shock that this girl actually joined the Dark Knight. When she turned back, she heard them say that they were also giving her land. Probably a high position the village would flourish if they opened a guild here. But many believed that June would not support them because the headman had expelled her and her parents had never respected her. Would they really miss such an opportunity because of them? Because of this, the village chief and June's parents began to be despised. It's not even funny they found scapegoats and thought that June would forget about everything. They are all the same. If she agrees, she will have to fight this anger. So she said that she would rather give up the land where such people live. The dungeons were more comfortable than with them, so she asked Mayer to choose something else for her. The gentleman, of course, agreed, and then the girl realized that this really wouldn't change much. But the attitude towards the elder and parents will now be different. Being in the Dark Knight was very convenient when she joined Fabian. Everyone just laughed that she was fooled. This time they won't go within cannon shot. They left the village, probably still far from the base. She hadn't used it for a long time, but she decided it was worth a try. The main character has a special skill related to the game system. Ability to open the interface and view the status. She can quickly check her stats or even see the enemy's status and cooldown boost. She has information that no one else in this world has, and she can find out her level without devices at any time. She is now level 23, and initially it was 20. It seems that the Dark Knight's fighters get a lot of experience for clearing dungeons. Fabian also fought monsters in the first round, but only with those who were on the way. She had not been in the dungeon before, so she lacked experience. But he was surprisingly talented. While he was teaching her, she couldn't even use her skills properly. But it only irritated the other people in the group, so the offer at level 20 was quite unexpected. At first, she thought that he simply didn't realize how weak she was, but he said he didn't care. They would just raise her level. But she said that adding her to the group would greatly lower the average level of the Dark Knight. Meyer stated that he would still be above average in Fabian's group. That was obvious and hard to disagree with. She knew he was right. She had no arguments to object to, and she had to admit he was right on this issue. Meyer was in the 80 range, and even if you only counted the two of them, the average would still be around 50. In order to fight the Demon King, one had to be at least level 60. This was the minimum requirement for such an opponent. In the first round, they barely reached the required level, but that was just the beginning of their journey. The opponent turned out to be much stronger. Meyer was in the 80s from the start, which put him in a much better position to fight. He also had resistance to physical attacks, possibly because he was the core of a Demon King, and his magic attack was high. Meyer's magical defense was weaker compared to his other stats, but it was still significantly higher than many other people's. All this explained why all attempts to kill him failed. He was too strong to be destroyed so easily. If she had immediately verified that his level and strength were as she thought, she wouldn't have wasted so much time on surveillance and useless attempts. The guy she saw was Nova Pelham. He was considered the rising star of the group and was very friendly, reminding her of his brother. In order to kill Meyer, she had to communicate with Nova, trying to get information about dungeons through him that Nox clearly couldn't conquer. But the Duke always returned, and Nova quickly raised her levels, which greatly complicated her plan. June continued to thank him for allowing her to rise in the ranks of the Dark Knight. It was her merit, and she always felt this gratitude. All of this was possible thanks to him. But now, June felt guilty. She felt like she had used him for her own purposes, and he had never joined in their plans. This bothered her greatly, and she resolved to treat him better in the future. Meyer noticed that she was looking somewhere and turned to her with a question, wondering where she was looking. He was always attentive to her behavior, and this did not escape his attention. June realized that her thoughtful gaze was too conspicuous. It began to bother her, and she felt a little embarrassed. She was not used to such attentiveness from Meyer. She replied that she was simply lost in thought, trying to hide her excitement. The gentleman smiled, noticing her oddity, and said that she had always been unusual, which only added to the interest in her personality. Perhaps Meyer thought that her behavior looked suspicious, especially when she was staring into empty space. She decided that next time she should be more careful and not display such behavior. The horseback ride was boring, and June couldn't escape the feeling. She decided to share it with him, even though she knew he probably wouldn't be too interested in her experiences. When they arrived at the base, everyone would probably be surprised by her presence. It would be unusual, and June couldn't help but feel nervous before all her colleagues met her. She was aware that having a support mage on the team now changed the group dynamics considerably. It could affect their next moves, and she wondered how the others would react. The important point was that this support mage had come on the captain's personal orders. This was rather strange, considering that he usually did not make such decisions. The whole thing remained a mystery. Some players started to consider him a cheater because of his ability to collect the strongest characters. This made the Dark Knight even more powerful and influential, and many paid attention to it. It was strange that no one of such powerful people had been personally invited. This added even more questions and confusion regarding the actions of the Duke and his team. June noticed that their expedition was full of strong and experienced people. Each one was special, and she felt that her place here was not just an accident, it was part of her path. Axion confirmed that the Duke did indeed have what it took to select warriors based on their actual abilities. This was different from other expeditions, where origins were always taken into account. In other expeditions, it was the origin or material investment that was important, which made this approach of the Duke completely unique and special. His selection was aimed at the real qualities of the warriors. He has enough money and power in his baggage compartment to command respect and enough authority to help anyone. It's unclear who wouldn't want to come under his protection. The man was sure that this was why the lady had joined their squad and soon became a commander. She had such qualities that made people follow her. Oksana claimed that she would not obey a weak leader. It was important to her that everyone in the dungeon was useful. Those who could not be useful right away had to start from the very bottom. For June, the situation was absolutely obvious. It was as if she already knew a lot about her place in this world, as if her life path was predetermined. Members of the Red Wolves said that June was a good fit for Nox. They believed that he really liked her, and it did not go unnoticed. One could say that she is simply talented, but such words can sometimes be misunderstood because not everyone would perceive it as a simple statement of fact. The Dark Night was said to be one of the best expeditions. Talents like June found themselves. She asked if they were recruiting. June confirmed her words and asked again if it was the same when they accidentally met someone with talent. It was not a casual question, but rather a test. The girl repeated her words again. Now a challenger had appeared, but it was unclear how all this would go further because no one knew what trials awaited. Many might want to become warriors of Meyer Nox, considering how easily June passed. Previously, everyone had to pass entrance exams, which gave only a few a chance. The Dark Knight entrance exam was a spectacle of incredible power. People from all over the world gathered to show off their abilities, and the audience could judge the level of each. Some decided to try their luck before joining other groups. This was not unusual, as everyone was trying to find their way in life. Many tried to enter the Dark Knight more than once. Many people were never able to get in, and every year their number only increased, which caused envy. Jun remarked that indeed she would also have thought that a person who was a yellow support mage could not become a captain. It seemed unbelievable. It was surprising that there were people who were truly happy about her presence. This was an unexpected discovery for the girl, because she did not expect such warmth and support. She knew that the position would be more trouble than it was worth, but she still said that they had come together because of his lordship, who had insisted on it. June noted that some might be against it, but she assured that once they saw Mrs. June's skills, everyone would immediately understand how capable she was, and that it would be for the benefit of everyone. Everything he said was exactly the same as the moment they first met. His words were clear and confident, and she immediately remembered that moment when they first started working together. June asked him if he was really proud of it, and Axion replied that the problem was that the village's true strength could only be shown in the dungeon where everything was real. Perhaps she could have asked his lordship about it, but she was surprised that he wanted to do it right now. It seemed too hasty a decision for such an important task. According to them, the exam would be held a few weeks after returning to base, and June began preparing for this event, realizing that a lot of work awaited her. Ginia just laughed at her thoughts, but Jun thought that Axion's idea might not be that bad. She could use it to her advantage to improve the situation. Time was flying by, and her position in the expedition was rather precarious, so she began to think about whether she should create her own group with new people to strengthen her position. A man approached her and asked her to look in that direction, but June could not understand what exactly he wanted to show her, and her curiosity only grew stronger with each passing moment. The gentleman announced that they were almost there, and June felt a surge of excitement and anticipation wash over her. She was ready to see what awaited them at the new base and how everything would be arranged. They arrived at the Principality of Noctenteria. This was their base, and everyone who was with them was very happy to see them return. The atmosphere was full of joy and relief. June was surprised because it was the first time she visited the base of another expedition. and everything looked new to her, many new faces and impressions. It was actually surprising that he already had such a base. Perhaps because he was an archduke, he was very influential and wealthy, which allowed him to maintain several troops. Yes, and he could support 3 squads of knights at once. And now June also felt like a bit of a cheater, realizing that her position in this structure also had certain advantages. The gentleman, as always, met her in the noctenteria. He attracted her attention with his presence, despite the atmosphere filled with difficult events, which did not go unnoticed. The main character, June Carentia, admitted that she now truly feels like she has become part of the Dark Knight, for the first time imbued with the feeling of this place and her role in it. Mayor Knox was somewhat puzzled and irritated by her words. He had not expected her to feel it just now, thinking that her affection should have shown itself much earlier. The girl, noticing his reaction, quickly said that she hadn't meant anything like that. Mayor, understanding her concern, told her to remember that this was now her base, her place to live and act. Although they hadn't crossed paths yet in this round, Meyer clearly wanted to get ahead of Fabian, and it showed in his actions. He must have remembered how Fabian had taken the Demon King away from him by acting first. Or else Mayer thought that June was still yearning for the old times, for old acquaintances and habits which also haunted him, making him doubt her intentions. The girl smiled and said softly that of course she agreed with his words, but she understood that they had to move on and develop their relationship within the Dark Knight. However, she felt that problems could arise if Meyer did not begin to trust her. She felt that trust was an important element of their interaction, and that without it, it was difficult to move forward. Meyer, after considering her words, decided to show her the castle as part of her introduction to the Dark Knight. He believed it would help June better understand the place where she would now be working and living. June was a little surprised, not understanding why Mayer was so concerned about her company, if their goal was to show her the castle and secure her presence within the structure where her role had already been determined. The girl explained that she was not against his company. She just thought that he probably had other things to do. She emphasized that as vice captain, her presence could not be useless. Mayer remained silent, unsure of how to respond to her comment, but aware that if she went with him, it would attract the attention of the newcomers. He considered the importance of not attracting unnecessary attention. Jun realized that in this situation, it would be better to ask Axion or another person to accompany her in order to avoid unnecessary attention from the newcomers and not disrupt the progress of plans within their group. When June looked back, she saw no one and could not understand where her companions, who had just recently followed her, had gone. This confused her greatly. Fabian and the others quickly realized where this could lead and decided to disappear, while the gentleman assumed that she had lost something and was looking for it. Despite her anxiety, the girl reassured everyone by saying that she was fine and that they could continue on their way without delay. Her words calmed those around her. Even though June was a captain, she couldn't understand how her pseudo-friends could do something like that, leave a newbie, and just run away without caring about how she would cope. The butler was very glad that Ruskin returned safe and sound, because this meant that everything was fine, and no one was hurt, despite the possible dangers. June was a little surprised to learn that the base, in addition to the others, also had a butler who played a special role here, giving the whole place a special atmosphere. The gentleman was pleased to meet Vince and immediately noticed that he needed to introduce someone. This girl was June Carentia, the vice captain of the expedition with which they were traveling. June was a little taken aback by the gentleman's revelation of so much at once. She was surprised that he hadn't kept information about her secret without telling her in advance. The gentleman noted that he had been looking for a talented person like June for a long time, and added that she should not be offended because she deserves respect for her achievements. It seemed that June couldn't process all the news at once, and the gentleman also said that she would probably have some requests regarding her room and conditions. But June was a little nervous when she voiced her request. She just wanted a bigger bed to feel comfortable in this new place. June couldn't understand why the butler was acting so strangely, and why Mayer was showing her such unusual kindness. She thought it had something to do with their shared memories. Perhaps he is interested not only in their past, but also in the information she has, because it could be important for his plans. She had absolutely no idea what he was planning, and that made it hard for her. She felt like the situation was slipping away from her. As they walked through the estate, the servants were amazed that his lordship was personally accompanying June. Everyone assumed that she was just one of the team. June felt awkward and wanted to hide behind the flowers. He kept talking about her, and it made her uncomfortable. She noticed that her hair was gray, which could mean that she was a support mage, but no one understood how she ended up among the Dark Knights. She had always disliked such conclusions. When they tried to determine magical affiliation by hair color, it was only useful for strong attacking mages. June knew that if she had heard the conversations, then Mayer probably had heard them too. It made her feel uneasy. However, Mayer seemed to be playing a role, pretending not to notice these conversations, which puzzled June. She could not understand what he was getting at. June finally decided that they needed to continue on their way. She couldn't walk around the estate with him forever. It was starting to get on her nerves. Mayer was surprised by her decision, stating that they hadn't even reached the main castle yet, and she was already getting ready to leave. June replied that she simply couldn't remember so many new places at once. She needed time to figure out what was going on. It was strange to hear such words from a former member of a group that had defended many difficult dungeons. His role had been important, and now he was sitting next to me and talking about it with such calm. He probably already realized that she was looking for excuses, but in reality, he knew that she was bothered by the attention of others, and it did not give her peace. He saw everything much more clearly than she did. The girl understood that while she was with them, it would be easier to write her name into history, secure her place, take a step that would be remembered. Now it became clear to her why he accompanied her. Mayer was sure that if everyone saw how he supported her, the protests against the appointment would gradually fade away. His support gave the girl the necessary confidence for further steps. If he had offered her a lower, less visible position, all the problems might have simply disappeared. But he took a risk and offered her a serious role. This added to the excitement, but also to the opportunities. The gentleman couldn't remember if he had said it, but he always disliked wasting time. He knew that they would be constantly consulting, and it was only a matter of time before she was promoted. The girl was grateful that he believed in her abilities so much and gave her a chance to develop, but deep down, she knew that it was not as easy as he thought. Her anxiety did not go away. In order not to waste any more time, she needed money or loyal people to really move forward. But until she had either, she felt like she was in limbo. Now she could only rely on herself, her strength and luck. Time would tell how her plans would develop, but in her soul, there were still many doubts and fears that needed to be addressed. At first, she would have to try twice as hard, perhaps listen to the advice of the Axion, and ask to go underground. It was sensible advice from an elder who had gone through many trials. The gentleman asked her not to even think about giving up the position. He was sure that she would cope, and her path was just beginning. The girl said that it was not that important to her. She felt normal and enjoyed her work. There was nothing supernatural about what was happening to her. If she reaches the level of the other expedition members, the battle against the Demon King will become much easier. This will increase her chances of success and improve her position in the group. The future will be much calmer, especially if she can strengthen her territory, reputation, and property. These factors will make her feel more confident. If Mayer defeats the Demon King and becomes the Emperor, new opportunities will open up for her. She can gain many privileges that will help her in the future. This was her first time in such an important position, and she knew she had to live up to the trust that had been placed in her. It would not be an easy task, but she was determined to succeed. The gentleman noted that he was confident in her ability to cope with the task, but warned that if it was too difficult or tiring, she could always turn to him for help. The girl thought about his words, wondering if perhaps this was how all the heirs of duchies were taught these days. In her eyes, it was a new and unusual approach. A leader who can support his subordinates easily inspires trust. Such a person will always be in the spotlight and will become an example for others. The girl suggested to finish this excursion, to which the gentleman agreed. They could consider everything else next time, when the opportunity arose. The gentleman made arrangements with her and offered to take her to her room so that she could rest. He was ready to help her in any situation, even if it seemed unimportant. The girl was surprised and a little scared when he said he would walk her to her room. It was unexpected, and she couldn't understand why he needed to do it personally. She didn't understand why he wanted to walk her to her room, especially since she was used to making decisions on her own. This action confused her a little, but she didn't mind. Mayer said she had some free time that she could use to relax. It was unexpected, but appropriate given the circumstances. She intended to use this short break to get used to the new conditions, to try to adapt as much as possible to the changes happening around her. June, Carentia, noticing her words, asked a question, wondering how much time she would have for this rest. The gentleman replied that it would be until the meeting that was planned for her ceremony. Mayer added that it wouldn't be a long time, but still enough to get some rest. There was a confidence in her answer. She knew how to appreciate such moments of rest. June realized that she still had an important performance to make. She would probably have to give a speech, and the gentleman believed that her anxiety was caused by fear of public speaking. However, the girl explained that it was not a matter of fear, but rather that she did not like public speaking. She always preferred to convey information through presentations, rather than through oral speeches. Mayer noted that despite her opinion, she would have no choice, and would most likely have to speak. But in the end, she would not ask him to cancel this speech. They soon arrived at the place the gentleman had spoken of. Mayer pointed to the spacious area where she was now awaited, a place that symbolized her identity as the Dark Knight's vice captain. June, feeling relieved, looked around. The nature and the surroundings were indeed peaceful, and the comfortable bed in the room promised a good rest. She was grateful for that. The gentleman remained silent, only reminding her that if she felt the need, she could always call him, and he would be there. However, everything depended on her desires and needs. And now, finally, June felt relief. She was alone in the room, without strangers' eyes and tension, which gave her the freedom she had long awaited. The moment she was alone, June realized that with Mayer around, they were attracting too much attention. She felt uneasy about constantly watching their actions. Now that she was in the room, she decided to just rest and relax. She had time for herself, and she enjoyed this quiet moment alone. June stretched out on the bed, feeling her body finally relax. It was a relief after a day of meetings and conversations that had taken a lot of energy. Peaceful sleep came quickly. In her dreams, June relived the events of being called Fabian's dog. It was strange, but the feeling of such affection did not give her peace. It soon became clear to her that her name had become associated with sacrificial magic, which created many misunderstandings. It was ridiculous, especially for a support mage, but her reputation was at risk. Thanks to the girl's actions, Fabian can now continue to use his sword. This was an extremely important decision, because the sword is his weapon, a symbol of strength and independence. The girl could not hide her disappointment. For her, as a faithful companion, the safety of the owner should always come first, and she was worried about his well-being. This decision of hers seemed ridiculous, and because of this, she felt sad. At that moment, there was a knock on her door, asking if the vice captain was in her room. The girl thought that perhaps she was sleeping since she had not left her room for a long time. The maid asked why they needed her, and this made the girl wary. Suddenly, she heard a conversation, and her name was spoken. She immediately got tired of getting out of bed, not expecting anyone to look for her at that moment. She approached the door, asking what had happened since they were calling her so actively. Curiosity overcame her fatigue, and she decided to find out what was going on. The maid greeted her and explained that her name was Maria and that she would take care of the girl while her mistress stayed in the castle. This care was supposed to make her day more pleasant. The maid, already awake, brought water for washing. The girl noticed her attention, surprised that in such a place she could get such trifles. She tried to understand what exactly the maid meant by bringing water for washing. What kind of concern was this, and why was she so insistent in offering her help? Still, the girl allowed the maid to come in. She was a little puzzled, not understanding where people came from who were willing to help with such simple things as washing. The water the maid brought was special. It was warm and clean, and the girl had not seen such water for a long time. Everything seemed so unusual and even surprising. At that moment, it became clear to her that life in the castle was very different from the expeditions she had experienced with Fabian. Everything remained the same, even when she had sacrificed her arm for his safety. No one believed that she would be able to cope, given how difficult the situation was. But her skills turned out to be at their best, which was a real surprise to everyone around her. Fabian had always supported her, but even his sincere words could not fully convey how much he cared about her fate. He never admitted that her efforts were the deciding factor. He could have at least once truly appreciated her abilities, at least said something positive, but instead he remained silent and reserved. It upset her. This experience taught her an important lesson. Sometimes people sacrifice themselves, not for others, but for their own satisfaction. You can't expect recognition from others. Everything must come from the heart. After that, she decided that in the dark night such mistakes will not be repeated. She will not take unnecessary risks for others and will learn to choose a healthy balance between work and personal life. She realized that the most important thing was to find harmony between her work and personal life without overloading herself with obligations that could drain her energy and rob her of happiness. In such conditions, as in large corporations with good working conditions, it was much easier for her to feel safe. The maid noticed that the mistress was pleased. The lady explained with a smile that her joy was just a reaction to little things. Sometimes it was in such trifles that she found true pleasure. She valued moments of calm. The maid couldn't help but ask if her mistress was going to eat in the officers' mess or would prefer another place. It was an important decision for her because she could offer help. The lady asked with interest whether the maid would accompany her to the dining room. She expected that this small request would be fulfilled, but she did not realize the full depth of this gesture. The maid replied that of course she was ready to help, and together they headed to the right place. When they arrived, the mistress clarified what exactly the maid's role was. The maid reported that her duties included cleaning, decorating the room, preparing meals, and helping with scheduling. She was always expected to be around to keep things in order. It was more like a secretary's role, and June was a little surprised. She decided to ask if all the knights had such assistants. The maid replied that this was not really the case. She had assistants, but only 5 people besides herself, and the captain had permanent help. The maid said that his lordship usually avoids such things. He prefers to focus only on the dungeons and important matters. She added that Mayor really doesn't like to waste time on such things. He is always looking for ways to free himself from routine worries in order to focus on other things. The maid thought there should be more workers here, but for now everything is temporary. In the future, the number may increase when the situation stabilizes. So far, only 1 maid has been assigned to June, but her duties may soon expand, and perhaps more assistants will be assigned. June was very surprised and asked again if it was true that there should be other people. The maid confirmed that it was indeed so, since June occupied an important position. Being subordinate to a duke was certainly prestigious, but June understood that it was not necessary to have many people under her command in order to be effective. The conversation with the maid was calm and without tension. Perhaps Mary would be able to cope with all the duties, and June would be pleased with her work. June no longer worried about the little things and decided to let Mary take care of everything. She would trust her until more serious issues arose. The maid confidently promised that she would do everything at the highest level. She understood the importance of the assignment and was ready to make every effort to complete the task flawlessly. The mistress was not sure whether to immediately entrust her with such an important matter because they had only just met. However, the maid showed determination, and her words sounded confident. June thought it would be better if the maid brought her a quill and an empty diary. These were simple things, but they had become necessary for further work. The maid nodded and said that she would prepare everything as needed. She did not see anything difficult in this. After all, she was used to various assignments and always did her job well. June knew that if she wanted the Dark Knight to defeat the Demon King, she would have to prepare in advance. Preparation took time, and she was willing to put in the effort. In the first round, it took a long time to prepare, but now that she was the captain, the situation had changed, and she felt that it would take even less time to complete the task. She decided it would be better to start preparing early. This would avoid rushing and panicking in the future when it would be necessary to quickly respond to new threats. June came to the conclusion that she needed to create a detailed guide to this world. This would allow her to keep everything under control and minimize the unpredictability of the situation. The lady immediately began writing. She knew it would take a long time, but her notes gradually began to take shape. This was essential to the success of her plans. She had already done something similar in the first round, but now with experience, she managed to complete the work in just 2 days. This result was much faster than before. This journal contains a lot of valuable information about dungeons and ways to obtain items. All entries were carefully organized and structured for convenience. It was a sort of reference book. In the first round, she did something similar to always have information at hand that could be useful at any time. She never showed the diary to anyone. Even if someone asked, she would still hide it because it was her only secret, which she kept only for herself. She convinced everyone that it was a unique support magic skill that could not be found in ordinary magic schools. Now looking at the situation, she realizes that she was not mistaken in her conclusions. The second round was ruined, and if she had revealed the information about him, everything could have been different, especially after Fabian abandoned her for the Ring of Fire, leaving no chance of success. He took the information she shared with him from the first round to defeat the Demon King. He thought it was enough to advance to the next round without expecting a trick. But even so, she felt that he didn't need her anymore. After all, sharing important information with another expedition would be much more difficult after she had already been betrayed once. But perhaps Fabian realizes that she remembers everything that happened in the first round. This could be the key moment that will force him to make a decision that she cannot yet predict. She didn't rule out the idea that he might want to destroy her so that she wouldn't tell anyone anything important, and now she didn't understand what to do to avoid this danger. Strangely, despite all this, she still began to cooperate with Meyer in order to survive. But not knowing whether she should trust him, she was not sure whether she should show him her diary. After all, if Knox was truly interested in her magical support skills and the dungeon information she possessed, he could use her and then simply dispose of her as an unnecessary tool. If she gave him the diary, she would immediately become useless and loyal. She knew that she could simply be abandoned, as had happened before, and that was too dangerous for her. Besides, it would be strange and suspicious if everyone found out that she had such important information, while she herself remained in the shadows, hiding her real intentions from everyone. In the dungeon that June Carentia failed to enter in the first round, everything is written in Korean, making the information almost impossible for her to understand. Although she tried to figure it out, it was too difficult. Mary, although she trusts June, cannot directly tell her about the diary because she works for Mayor Knox. The girl understands that her relationship with Mary cannot be too open because she is subordinate. June knew it would be suspicious to give Mary money to keep her quiet. It was better not to take risks in such a matter, especially if there was any instability in their relationship. In the end, she decided to hide the diary, at least until she found people she could fully trust. It was safer than sharing this information with just anyone. Meyer couldn't blame her for that, because he himself was hiding a lot of things. He understood that in this world, you often have to hide the truth in order to survive, and he was no exception. Some things really do need to be hidden to keep their lives safe. The world they live in leaves no room for open weakness or honesty. For several days, June Carentia did not leave her room, preferring to remain alone. Her thoughts and inner experiences did not give her peace, and she was not ready to meet people. Her absence from public view had become a habit, and now she felt strange appearing among others. Her habit of remaining in the shadows was growing stronger, and the outside gazes were only beginning to add to the tension. This kind of behavior, in fact, only fueled the interest of those around her. They increasingly tried to understand why June avoided communication and why they did not appear in her sight. If she really didn't want to attract attention, she could have just eaten in the officers' mess. It was a less crowded place, and there wouldn't have been so many questions about her decision to not show up. However, she had not yet been officially assigned, so she was forced to go to the common dining room. This was a necessary step to avoid appearing disconnected from the team and her duties. This dining hall was where the regular members of the expedition gathered, and the food was no less good, despite the more modest atmosphere. It was not as upscale, but it still provided good food. Mayor Knox would never allow himself to be like others. He was much more demanding, and his attitude to economy was strict. It was important to him that everything was at the highest level without compromise. In the dungeon, she had to work hard, not only to complete the task, but also to show gratitude to Meyer. Her actions and decisions were always under his control, and she could not let him down. June overheard the knights discussing her relationship with the captain. They claimed that he intended to make her his wife, and they sounded confident enough. She couldn't understand where they got such rumors from. She became curious as to who exactly could come up with such nonsense and start spreading it among everyone. Turning around, she saw that the knights were the ones doing the talking. They claimed that the captain had not only invited her personally, but had also promoted her to vice captain, which added credibility to their words. There were times when she acted as a support mage, and the knights could not understand why she was assigned to such an important role in the Dark Knighthood. It seemed strange to them. June responded that it was all just speculation, and that they were probably just making their conclusions based on rumors rather than facts. It was just their guesswork. She added that perhaps the captain and this girl simply have some kind of relationship hidden from everyone, or they have been lovers for a long time. But all this remains at the level of hypotheses. June was stunned by what she had just heard. The rumors that had been circulating around her name and the captain seemed completely absurd and made no sense. The knights, however, thought that such a relationship might be quite natural. So many exceptions had been made for the vice captain that it all looked suspicious. They believed that when it came to love, people could do things that defied logic. They couldn't find any other explanation for what was happening. In their view, June could not have been so important in the extermination of demons that her behavior would cause such exceptions. They sought a simpler explanation. June noticed that when the captain was near this girl, his face filled with the expression of a man in love. It was not at all like a normal relationship. The knights began to wonder what this could mean, and decided that perhaps they had already begun dating. This seemed quite likely to them. June was shocked. She decided that she would not interfere in this conversation and let the rumors spread on their own without paying attention to them. He wasn't falling in love with her. He was falling in love with her talent, and she tried to convince herself of that. It seemed that his feelings were not directed at her, but at her abilities. Talent like hers is not something you come across easily. She tried to figure out how else to deny these stupid rumors. She wasn't happy with how quickly they were starting to get distorted. She tried to open up the relationship, but he was only focused on the dungeon. In the eyes of others, he was known as an iron wall, unbreakable by women. In fact, he had never invited anyone before. After all, there was a first time for everything, and this meeting could also be unusual. And despite everything, she couldn't believe that it was actually easier for him to believe in her feelings than in the possibility of support from her. Previously, she was called a doggy, but now it seems that everything has changed. What was considered her weakness has become something new and not so obvious. These rumors were pure nonsense, and she knew she had to do something about them immediately. She couldn't ignore them. The situation required intervention. When she raised her head, she immediately noticed Axio. He was standing next to her, and as if by chance, met her gaze asking what she was doing there. The guy greeted her politely and explained that he simply noticed her presence and decided to come in. He didn't want to hide anything. His action was completely natural. What was interesting was that he asked her why she had come here when there was a separate mess for officers. There was clearly something unusual about her choice of location. The lady noted that she was aware of the situation, but since she had not yet officially assumed her powers, she still had a lot to understand. Axion was surprised by her principled approach to this issue. She explained that in such a situation, she could not allow herself to say many words, even if she wanted to speak out. Everything was too delicate and required caution. Axion understood her position, but he couldn't resist sharing his opinion. He admitted that he liked to talk, and here was his advice for her. She couldn't even imagine what it would be. Axion added that spreading gossip was a fun activity. Everyone was interested in discussing other people's secrets, even if they were from the most closed places. However, in his opinion, those who interfere in other people's affairs just out of curiosity should be punished. He was sure that this was unfair and vicious. His words were loud enough for the other knights standing nearby to immediately take notice of his remark. Each of them waited for him to continue. June noticed that this was a rather harsh statement, but Axion had no doubt. In their situation, such measures were justified. In the dungeon, doubts could cost lives, and everyone should understand that. He stressed that everyone must clearly understand who they can rely on, who they can trust with their lives. No one is allowed to interfere with the feelings of his lordship for the sake of empty curiosity. Rumors about Mayer soon began to circulate, and once they reached his ears, he immediately became enraged. His reaction was swift and furious. June admitted that when she first met him, she too couldn't understand what exactly was expected of her. It was a vague and incomprehensible feeling that she couldn't figure out. Axion noted that there is a clear difference between misunderstanding and fabrication. He explained that one cannot simply accept such rumors as truth, but if you look at it from the other side, it is not so bad. The girl asked him what exactly made him think that way. She felt that his explanation did not quite satisfy her curiosity, and she wanted to understand why he held such an opinion. The guy explained that the thing was that they had started to perceive her as one of them. He was sure that it was this closeness and trust that led to the rumors spreading so forcefully. The girl asked him again if he doubted it. It seemed to her that he might doubt her behavior, that she might perceive his words differently than he expected. Axion said that she would not be the first to decide to run away after joining the ranks. The lady asked him if he thought that she would also run away over such trifles as rumors and omissions. The girl was very sensitive to such questions and asked what exactly could be the reason why the newcomers left so quickly. She could not understand what scared them, and this became her question. She already knew a lot about the Dark Knights, their goals and duties, but nevertheless, she would like to hear the exact reason so that she would be prepared for possible difficulties in the future and not be caught off guard. The girl decided not to leave this question unattended and asked Axion what could have made her run away. The gentleman reminded her that according to him, his lordship had not invited anyone except her. She confirmed his words, saying that she understood why he needed a support mage. However, she felt that their reaction to these rumors was too violent and perhaps did not deserve such attention. This is true, but for the most part, they understand his character well and do not expect anything different from his actions. He has always been like this, and they have already become accustomed to his peculiarities. He no longer pays attention to other matters. He is completely occupied with one thing: closing the gates of the dungeons. Everything else seems secondary and uninteresting to him. Now the girl understood his motives, for sure saw that there was nothing more important to him than this mission. This became clear when she watched him once again. Meyer is famous for his hatred of the monsters and demons that live in the dungeons. He strives to cleanse them, and this is perceived as a virtue of his work. Meyer's behavior is sometimes difficult to call normal. His actions may seem strange and even eccentric, but no one would dare to tell him this directly. It is possible that the wind hidden inside his body is the cause of this strange behavior. However, at this point, it is difficult to say exactly what is affecting his psyche. Whenever a new dungeon appears, they immediately head there to defend it and destroy anything that might threaten their safety or goals. Due to such a tight schedule, from time to time, someone from the group leaves unable to cope with the workload. This has become a common occurrence that no longer surprises anyone. Most of those who joined them were newcomers, interested only in the glory that would come from participating in expeditions. They hoped for easy prey. These people thought that they could just shoot magic from afar without being in serious danger and still earn all the laurels and glory, but it doesn't always work out that way. This decision was correct because the newcomers believe that it is better to be part of the Dark Knight's team than to participate in other expeditions with less successful results. However, for these people, the conditions of life in the group are too harsh. There are those who came here with great ambitions to defeat the Demon King and become heroes. But most of them are too afraid for their lives to risk it for glory. Unlike them, Meyer has firm principles and is not prone to doubts. That's why he sincerely respects him, despite all his oddities. But despite this, he still perceives him as a person who only thinks about his goal. June Carentia was shocked by his words about his respect for her. She even thought that he had lost his mind a little, because it was difficult to believe in the sincerity of these words. But the girl quickly noticed that he didn't seem to care much about the opinions of others. He was absorbed in something of his own, as if nothing could distract him. And although she tried to be tolerant of his stubbornness, Axion casually noted that despite everything, he still noticed certain changes in her behavior. Jun was surprised, but Axion calmly explained that he was actually thinking about her. He thought a lot, and these thoughts seemed to be the most important to him. She blushed a little, feeling her insides starting to burn. She asked him shyly if it was true. Axion explained that he had initially tried to choose a room that suited her. He had never shown himself like that until recently, and something in his tone, when he asked to be called captain, added a strange tenderness. Axion said that she was the only one he allowed to do this to, and also complimented her appearance, noting the shape and color of her hair. He was visibly agitated, and her attention was drawn to his strange reaction. He told her that he thought that only in the dungeon could he notice such things. Meyer seemed more powerful and confident. At first, June Carentia looked at him as if he were an ordinary person, but Axion clearly reacted to this more than he should have. Perhaps this was a side of him that she hadn't noticed before, and she couldn't understand why his attention was suddenly so focused on her. Or maybe he had changed since they met. Maybe he had begun to feel that she stood out from the rest in some way, but it was still a mystery to her. He immediately chose her as the vice captain. Perhaps because of his hidden agenda, June didn't understand how her special position would help in protecting the dungeon. But it was all part of his plan. The lady asked if he really thought it was more convenient than admitting that she was his mistress, emphasizing that such questions needed serious clarification. Axion tried to say something, but his words did not find the proper response. He felt that whatever he said would not change the current situation. The girl, without hiding her thoughts, said that since everyone thought so, they should somehow clarify the situation once and for all in order to stop the rumors. Axion hoped that everything would be settled after the trip to the dungeon. He believed that it would somehow divert attention from the current issues and give time for reflection. The girl noted that in fact her intention was exactly this: to understand the situation and figure out what to do next. Now everything became clear to her. She finally realized what rumors were going around about them and how much had been distorted, but she tried to ignore the nonsense and remain calm. Realizing that she would have more privileges on the expedition, she decided not to miss the chance and use them. On this wave, she decided to ask Axion an important question. She asked where the captain usually dined. It was a question that had been bothering her for a long time, and now she decided to clarify it so that she could proceed with confidence. He told her, and she quickly found the place where the captain preferred to spend time alone. And she became curious about what he was doing there. When she came and knocked, she was immediately allowed in. She was a little nervous, but when she heard his voice, she knew this was a moment she could not put off. When she entered, she noticed that the captain was clearly in a bad mood, and this made her feel that perhaps she should not have come just now. However, having gathered her strength, she said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. It was her way of starting a conversation and trying to establish some kind of contact in a difficult situation. When the gentleman saw June, his face immediately broke into a smile, and he decided that she had come to him with some important question or request. He was sure of it. His voice suddenly became soft and soothing, as if he wanted to linger near her. Something about her presence perhaps caught his attention. Now that the mood was much calmer, June felt some relief, and her tension eased a little. The atmosphere around her became more favorable. She explained that she wanted to discuss something important, and also noticed that there was someone else in the room. Apparently, this was unexpected for her. In the man dressed in the uniform of a dark knight, June recognized the white robe, which she thought might belong to a priest. The master, as if nothing had happened, said that he forgot to introduce them. The gentleman noted with slight surprise that it was Augustus de Vanitas. June tensed slightly because she did not expect to meet him in this place. He was the best priest of their expedition, and June saw him for the first time. However, she remembered some information about him from the game, so her interest was immediately aroused. August was known as the chief healer in the Dark Knight's ranks, and was also considered Meyer Knox's right hand. Although he was a battle priest, he essentially only dealt with healing. He was once credited with a strange phrase: "The stronger your muscles, the better you heal." It sounded strange, but no one dared to refute his words. Despite the absurdity of this statement, he had such authority that no one even thought of arguing with him. Everyone simply accepted his wisdom. The gentleman turned to the priest Augustus, and without wasting any time introduced June to him. He said that she would soon become captain and lead their expedition. August nodded, introduced himself, and with a restrained smile, remarked that he would not disturb them. He wished them luck in their endeavors before continuing his business. June was completely shocked by his behavior. He left so abruptly that she didn't even have time to say anything. It was so unexpected that she couldn't understand what had happened. Meyer, noticing her surprise, said that August always behaved like that. He added that this man never created unnecessary problems and advised her not to worry about it. The girl flew in for her own reasons, although she didn't really want to. But the situation itself seemed strange to her, and it made her a little wary. She couldn't figure out what exactly was bothering her. She asked how the gentleman had guessed, and he replied that it was written all over her face. This was rather unexpected, and she was slightly surprised by his insight, although she herself had not noticed anything special. But the girl, a little wary, remembered that she was standing with her back to him. To this, the gentleman joked that all the information was written on the back of her head, which caused her slight bewilderment. He noted that perhaps it was only her that did this, or perhaps it was everyone. She thought about his words, not knowing how to interpret such a joke. Then the gentleman asked her to stop sulking and asked her why she had come. His voice was calm, but there was a certain curiosity in it, as if he expected something special from her visit. At that moment, the girl realized that she had not come empty-handed, but with the intention of offering something. She remembered her goals again and decided to directly state what was in her heart. She approached the captain with a proposal that she hoped would interest him. It was an important step, and she felt she had to act decisively not to let the opportunity slip away. The proposal was to update the personnel and improve the training. She believed that these changes could significantly affect their performance and improve the overall result. The gentleman noticed that the captain did not seem to be too pleased to discuss such things. Apparently, he was not delighted with her interference in matters that seemed to be familiar and habitual to him. However, the girl had already decided to start performing her duties. Although she had not yet been officially appointed, this fact did not bother her, and she was ready to act immediately. She confidently stated that if there was anything she could do to improve the situation, she would do it without hesitation. The determination in her voice left no doubt about her intentions. Before the official appointment, all her actions might look like interference, but there was little time to think. She understood that every step was important, and the moment could not be missed. The girl decided that she needed to tell the mayor about her intentions. Now at this moment, he was looking at her, like a lion looks at his prey, which made the situation even more tense. But there was no need to be afraid. She understood that it was necessary to clearly define her positions and give a worthy answer to all possible questions without losing confidence in her abilities. The girl confidently said that the Dark Knight consists of 3 main groups. The first group is currently actively preparing for the battle with the powerful Demon King. Their efforts are focused on strategy and training. The second group serves as a backup for the first. They replace its members when they are temporarily absent, ensuring constant readiness. It is a flexible and important part of the structure. The third group are newcomers who have not yet received sufficient training, but they have the potential to become part of the first 2 groups in the future. Their task is to learn and train. Usually, the high-level dungeons are mastered by the first and second groups, since the third group can barely cope with the easier ones. This creates problems because their potential is not used to the maximum. The girl explained that the third group is no smaller than the first 2. There are too many participants who are not yet ready for serious tests, and this makes the work difficult. The gentleman asked if she was suggesting to reduce the number, but she explained that this was not the problem. It was necessary to cut off those who did not have a strong will and get rid of the weak. Many of those who joined the third group did so merely to profit from the reputation of a successful expedition without having serious intentions or the necessary fortitude. It may sound cruel, but that was the message the girl wanted to convey. The gentleman did not find her words offensive. He agreed that there was nothing wrong with it and asked her to sit down. There were times when Fabian's expedition surpassed the Dark Knight in results, and their success did not go unnoticed. They paid great attention to detail and strategy, and it paid off. During that period, they focused exclusively on mastering high-level dungeons, which allowed them to achieve such success. It was with this approach that they were able to bypass the Dark Knights. Therefore, she believes that it is worth continuing to follow the same strategy, because it has already proven its effectiveness. She has always provided accurate information about all new dungeons. June Carentia shared her thoughts only with Fabian, especially regarding the expedition. She thought they were blessed with something, but Meyer informed her that things would soon change. Meyer and June knew that their situation in the dungeons was difficult, and they understood that whoever was faster and could protect them at the right moment would now be important. Having more people on the team was important for the expedition to be successful, as it would increase the chances of success. June was confident that their plans were developing, as they had in the first round. Fabian was interested in what exactly she was talking about. It was an important moment for the entire group, but June could not reveal all the details, since much was still unknown. Each new stage of the game was unique, And June understood that even the great battle of the Holy Devil could be a little easier because the characters inherited skills from previous rounds. But each time the difficulty of the dungeons increased, the external circumstances became more and more dangerous, and June understood that they had to be ready for any tests. Fabian didn't know the whole picture yet, but June couldn't tell him all the secrets either, because many things were still unclear, and it was hard for her to share everything at once. She assured Fabian that he no longer had to worry about being ahead of her in these matters. The main thing was to focus on the upcoming battle with the Demon King, and nothing else mattered. The captain had to think carefully about how to make the Dark Knight even stronger because his strength played a key role in this situation. But how to achieve this goal? He began to doubt, asking himself questions. Did everything the girl had suggested really make sense? He asked her what exactly she had meant and how it would affect the situation. The girl realized that she was lucky because he agreed to listen to her. She explained that if you get rid of people who have lost their will, the Dark Knight's power will increase significantly. These people are like rotten tangerines, which if left will spoil everything around them. If you do not get rid of them, it will lead to the destruction of their entire structure and future plans. At the moment, all efforts were focused on closing the dungeons, but when preparations began for the battle with the Demon King, the talents might lose their will due to the influence of these rotten tangerines. That's why the lady believed that even the Dark Knight would need a personnel overhaul to avoid further problems. This is an important step and cannot be postponed. The gentleman objected that it would be quite difficult to separate them. It would take a long time. After all, such changes do not happen quickly. You need to act carefully. However, the Dark Knight did not have much time. If they tried to make changes abruptly, they would face a lot of discontent, which could lead to even more chaos. So the lady had an idea. She suggested finding those among the talents who could be useful to them. Among them were tangerine people who could be useful at the right moment. She spoke about how important it would be to develop unrecognized talent, because that was the only way to strengthen her position. And when she remained captain, that would be the deciding factor. If the chosen candidates take the position at the top of the Dark Knight, she will show everyone her value as a leader and prove that she is capable of handling this responsible position. And only then will her influence and status be strengthened. And it will become clear that she deserves this role. And it was not by chance that she ended up at such a high level, earning respect and trust. The rumors will gradually disappear, and there is no point in turning to Mayer for help. He may not even pay attention to these rumors, because his intervention can only worsen the situation. In fact, he may not even be aware of these rumors. He is interested in completely different matters, and for him such talk does not matter until it begins to threaten serious matters. He most likely doesn't care about public opinion and his personal honor, so he may not even take the rumors seriously, especially since the accusations concern her relationship with such a person. He expressed interest in how exactly she was going to deal with such a challenge, with the task of correcting the situation and increasing her importance in the eyes of others. To which the girl replied that there would be no easy solutions here. All that remains is to act decisively. There is only one way to achieve the desired result in this difficult situation. Back to reality. The gentleman noted that he likes this method. He sees in it the strength and determination that he values in people who are able to do everything possible to achieve a goal. He is confident that much will change once she officially joins their ranks. He expects that her actions and approaches can influence the overall picture and bring about positive changes. He believes in giving her a chance and allows her to try without putting obstacles in her way. This is his way of supporting her, allowing her to act in the direction she chooses. The girl was very grateful for this opportunity, and the gentleman assured her that he would provide her with all the necessary rights so that she could act at her own discretion without unnecessary restrictions. June Carentia could call him along if she needed it, and he was willing to help her. It was her right, and she had no doubt in her ability to exercise it. However, she knew that if she did this, the rumors would not die down, and the situation would get worse. It could affect her reputation, and she did not want that at all. The master told her to ask Vince, the butler, for equipment if she needed anything. Anything she needed to prepare, she could get without asking any questions. The vice captain had the right to do everything, including deciding who would be given a chance to live and who would not. This gave her considerable power, but also enormous responsibility. It was the leader's choice to decide whether to risk one life to save others. For example, whether to try to save one person when the entire group was at risk. In the dungeon, you never know what might happen and how the situation will turn out, but she had already received the basic permissions, and now all that was left was to decide whether anything else was needed. The girl replied that this was quite sufficient because she saw no need for further explanations. Everything she needed had already been said. He suddenly remembered something important and almost forgot about it. It was necessary to take care of the last detail that should not be overlooked. He would send one man with her, and she must take him with her. It was a mandatory condition that he considered necessary for her safety. She assumed that this man would accompany her for supervision, although in reality, she had no intention of doing anything that required secrecy or mystery. He added that if she helped kill the Demon King, he would not refuse to support her in the future. This promise was important, and she had to remember it. June could ask anything that came into her head and get answers. He was willing to give her full information if it would help her in her decisions. The girl promised to do her best, knowing that great hopes were placed on her. She had to justify the trust he had placed in her. A new path for the Dark Knight was chosen, and rumors of her activities began to spread much faster than she expected after she took office. Most of the time, the reaction to her choices was negative. People couldn't understand how a support mage could choose such talents. It raised a lot of questions. They especially did not understand the principle by which the selection would take place. They did not want to take risks because even in a difficult dungeon, you can die if you make a mistake. It was a completely expected reaction, but she had come specifically during lunch to meet someone worthy, hoping for a constructive conversation and understanding. However, she didn't quite understand where everyone had gone. The search and training of talent from the very first day had been a complete failure, which worried her a little. She began to worry because it seemed like no one was there. It was strange considering that she had looked long and hard for them, but had never found them. There was no one looking for her, which only increased her anxiety. She continued to search, hoping that at least someone would show up, but all was in vain. She was in complete shock, not understanding where everyone had gone. There was not a single trace, not the slightest hint of the presence of other people. She thought they were just hiding to make fun of her, as if this whole thing was some kind of evil prank that she couldn't handle. She wanted to meet everyone in person to sort things out. It was important for her to understand why no one approached and what was going on behind her back. But they chose to ignore her and talk behind her back, not having the courage to come and talk directly. This did not suit her, and she was ready to act. She believed that if they had already started talking, they should continue and do it openly. She wanted to hear the truth and get answers straight to her face. She didn't care that it would be difficult. She was ready for difficulties, but she believed that nothing could be impossible if she decided to go all the way. She decided to combine the information from the captain and the skills to choose the right people. It was not easy, but she was ready to get back to work. It was as if she had returned to the times when she had enthusiastically played her favorite games. Memories of that time began to overwhelm her as if she were a child again. She hadn't tried her best in a long time, but now she decided it was time to put in her best effort. Now she was going to do everything right and leave no mistakes. Axion heard talk of a support mage called a ghost and was immediately interested. He couldn't figure out where the strange nickname came from, but it intrigued him. It was said that she seemed to catch people when they came to eat, and that her actions seemed excessive and strange, almost abnormal. This is what caused confusion among people. However, Axion still did not understand what exactly had happened, why they began to call her that. The mystery attracted him more and more, and he decided to figure out this issue. He decided to look around, and after a while he found her June was sitting alone in the corner, and he immediately realized that there was something strange here that caught his attention. He noticed her strange smile and began to suspect that this was the ghost they were talking about. He was sure that there was something mysterious in her behavior. He approached her to find out what was going on and asked her why she was sitting there alone and if she was okay. He was worried that she might be unwell. June, a little embarrassed, replied that she had simply been working too much and had not noticed him. She also said that such moments happen when she is absorbed in her work. She smiled and added that sometimes she really is strange, but only when she spends too much time on one task. It's her habit. Axion was surprised, but the girl still remained mysterious. He couldn't understand how she managed to continue training newbies and still remain so cheerful. She explained that sometimes she worries about many things, but she does not let these emotions take over. She tries not to be sad, even if everything is boiling inside. This is her approach to life, especially when she was entrusted with such important responsibilities. She wondered where to invest her efforts and resources. It was her responsibility, and she took it seriously. Axion was a little surprised by her calm and reasonableness, but June understood well that her duties were not the most terrible part of her job. There were other difficulties. He said that it seemed that she had documents, but he thought that to be completely sure, he needed to see her in person. That was the only way to understand her abilities and capabilities. It seems that everyone is avoiding her, but the girl confidently stated that she has a method. According to her, they can hide as long as they need and not be afraid. He suggested that she might be some kind of psychic, but she said with certainty that even for her, that was too difficult. The task was much more difficult. It wasn't just a dream, but something very similar. She explained that they could run as much as they wanted, but in the end, they would still be caught. It doesn't matter whether she sees them or not. They have no choice anyway, and sooner or later, they will face the inevitable. She also noted that everything would be as she decided. However, Axion began to worry, feeling that something might go wrong and they would not be ready. But the girl didn't quite understand what he was talking about. He said that problems could start if they were not disciplined and continued training. If their attitude was like this at this stage, he doubted that they would be able to carry out orders properly. This was a very serious matter for the entire group. It could really be dangerous. No one knew what could happen in the dungeon, where they would have to face the most unexpected difficulties, and the situation could escalate at any moment. They could go against her if they do not carefully monitor their actions and make decisions without emotions. The girl thought that was exactly what he was talking about. She knew that if they weren't careful, they would soon find themselves in an even more dangerous situation. He felt that he had been too careless this time. He had not considered all the possible risks, and now he was worried about the team realizing that they could make a mistake. She said she would accompany him if necessary. It was important for her to be there to support him and not let him go astray, despite the difficulty of the situation. Since even Mr. Axion's words cast doubt on their preparedness, they began to worry. This meant that their actions lacked confidence. He once said something similar. Perhaps the captain was worried too. At such moments, everyone in the group finds reasons to worry, and everyone seeks support from each other. In the dungeon, there is only one law: the strong destroy the weak. No matter how strong the magic seems, it will not save from someone who is more powerful. Even the most powerful mages can become defenseless against a monster. Strength often loses its meaning when it comes to a real threat that can tear you apart. It is impossible to escape from there. It is not scary to think about your own fate, but it becomes unbearable to think about what will happen to those who cannot fight. In the dark night, she had probably only been to the dungeon once, but that was no reason to doubt it. At times like these, she definitely felt experienced. Time changed her, but good skills did not appear instantly. To survive and win, experience was needed, which was lacking. and there was little time to accumulate it. Becoming an expedition leader was no easy task. Even with her skills, she still had to prove herself worthy of the role. But she was certainly no novice at this. Eureka noted that she was grateful to Axion for his worries, but everything was fine. She knew that she had her own trump card that could change everything at the right moment. Oksana was a little puzzled and asked what she meant by that. There was genuine interest in his voice, although nothing was said explicitly. The support mage cannot attack, defend, or heal. However, she has one power, and that is holy devotion, which she uses at her own discretion. The magic that saved Fabian's arm was a spell that could save a comrade. It had the power to pull them out of trouble, even if it required personal sacrifice. The target of this magic did not have to be just her. It was a power that could transfer pain and wounds to another, and therefore the life of her comrade could become a priority. Transferring wounds to another is a protective magic. With it, she could protect herself from a threat from her own comrades who did not know about her power. If anyone knew about this magic, everyone would stay away, so she decided that this secret had to be kept, otherwise her power could become a burden. She admitted that if she told about it, she would not be able to use her trump card to its full extent. Then this power would lose its effectiveness, and trust in it would also weaken. Axion was upset and asked the girl to tell him what was going on. However, she still replied that it was her personal secret, which she did not want to reveal even to him. Hearing this, Axion was a little embarrassed, but the girls still believed that they needed to maintain some distance, not revealing all the secrets to each other. Axion noticed that her self-confidence made him feel calmer, as if she knew what she was doing, and it suddenly gave him a sense of confidence. The girl added that the captain would soon choose someone for the mission, and everything would be fine. However, Axion asked besides the two whether there could be other possibilities. He said that when the decision was made, he would definitely notify her. She thought that it would be him, and that is why he came to her with this proposal. But the guy himself noted that if it were him, he would not offer help, and if the choice did not fall on him, then he would have to look for a more suitable candidate. Axion trusted the captain because he knew he would select the most suitable person for the task. The lady agreed with his opinion, considering it a reasonable approach. She expressed hope that the choice would be made in favor of someone who would truly be useful to their cause and would be able to effectively cope with the task. August told her to take care of him, keeping in mind the importance of his role in their case and his special needs in this process. The girl was puzzled and could not understand what exactly he meant by demanding such care from her. It was not entirely clear in the context of what was happening. She thought the captain had directed him to her, but she still couldn't understand what exactly he was talking about or how it related to her tasks. The gentleman confirmed her suspicions, but she could not believe it. It was so unexpected and unusual for her. It was the expedition's chief priest Mayer, who possessed incredible endurance and strength, which made him indispensable in difficult situations. Therefore, he did not need a priest to restore his strength. But at the same time, no one could replace Augustus, since his role was unique. June Carentia just wanted to train newbies. If this was part of surveillance, she couldn't see why she would do it, especially when she could pull a man back from the brink of death. She asked him to take care of her. His mere presence had already tired her out, although she tried to restrain herself, realizing that it was not so easy for him either. They were closely watched by other knights, hiding in the shadows, all waiting for the right moment to intervene or simply get information about what was happening. All the knights believed that this was the way they would succeed in their goals. It was a carefully thought-out strategy, and they hoped that everything would go according to plan. Augustus addressed those behind the wall. His words were directed at those who were hidden from view, adding tension and mystery to the situation. He asked if they had anything to say. His voice was calm but tense, as if he was expecting something important that might influence their next steps. However, as soon as the father realized that the situation was getting out of control, he hurried away. He stated that nothing important had happened and left the scene. The public perception of training changed when Augustus joined in. His presence added confidence, and training no longer seemed so dangerous and risky. June didn't have much faith in her own strength, but with him by her side, she felt much better. At least, she knew that with him, her chances of survival were much higher than if she were alone. She had only one life, and she knew that it was impossible to resurrect a person after death. There was no such trap that could bring back the dead, and this worried her. Only those who had reached level 99 could learn such magic. But at the moment, there was no one who could surpass Mayer, who was level 80. Level 99 gives a person such abilities that he can become almost a god. But this does not always mean superiority in situations requiring other qualities. However, even without resurrection, Magic August was always strong and could bring considerable benefit in a variety of circumstances, confirming its value. He was always by her side, whether in the dining room or in the corridors, accompanying her in her daily activities and helping her not only physically but also morally. His presence was always conspicuous, and this often complicated situations, especially when it was necessary to act covertly or unobtrusively. Some points in documents or information had to be checked by oneself, since trusting everything automatically would be extremely unwise. It might be better to become an archer than a swordsman, as they seem to be much more suitable for most tasks than swordsmen. Thanks to August, she had the opportunity to closely monitor what was happening, although he himself could not understand why this process of observation was so important to her. The girl noted that the tangerines they saw were unusually fresh and beautiful, but this is just a metaphor to describe the situation. He couldn't understand what tangerines she was talking about, since she was simply using the image to describe people, not fruits. Once here, she realized that she was meeting many more talented people than she expected, which opened up new horizons and opportunities for her. August, seeing her reaction, thought that she meant that these people were not only strong, but also fresh, full of energy and readiness for new achievements. The girl decided that she would need to check the selected candidates more thoroughly, and it seemed that they had really done a good job today. However, she suddenly learned that one of them had died, and this news stunned her, becoming an unexpected turn of events. She couldn't believe it, especially when the maid told her that he had died in the dungeon, and quite recently, leaving everyone in shock. It was a terrible loss, especially when she was told he was only 17 years old, and she couldn't understand how this could happen. The Dark Knight is not just a few squads, but an entire army organized according to all possible standards. It is a powerful force in which each soldier has his own role. The remaining groups are usually engaged in the rapid closing of the dungeon. These teams are distinguished by a high level of training and experienced fighters, so as not to overload the newcomers. Since he had become part of the Dark Knight, he shouldn't have died so easily. She had a premonition and asked the maid to deliver a report on the raid. The maid assured that she would bring information soon, and August added that death in the dungeons is not such a rare occurrence, and many perceive it as inevitable. The lady was aware of this, but her expeditions were usually more prepared. They avoided the large losses that were common practice for experienced units. Therefore, the number of deaths here was always lower than in other groups. August was surprised to learn that the lady was so well informed about this. The gentleman noted that this was no secret at all. The entire army knew how carefully they were being prepared, and how important it was to be prepared for the dangers of the dungeons, where there was always risk. When the maid brought the report, the mistress carefully read all the data, not missing a single detail, in order to understand what exactly happened during this raid. She soon realized what the problem was. There were some discrepancies that immediately caught her attention and made her question the safety of the group. She told Maria to notify her of any changes in this group. It was important to keep her finger on the pulse of the situation and be prepared for any unexpected event. August noticed that something was clearly bothering the lady. He felt her tension, but he couldn't figure out what exactly was bothering her about this report. The girl tried to calm him down, explaining that this was just an ordinary group with an ordinary percentage of deaths, Everything was as usual, and such cases could be expected. She stressed that even the number of deaths here is lower than in some other groups. However, there was one important moment that changed everything and made her worry. She wasn't interested in just the number of dead, but in how they died. That was more important than any number because the details revealed the true reasons. Augustus couldn't figure out what exactly was so special about these deaths, so he decided to personally study the place where the events happened to figure it out and see the problem for himself. Now it seemed he was beginning to understand what was going on. If a group encountered problems in preparation, then its members were doomed to die, and this was inevitable. There is nothing surprising in this. However, not the entire squad dies at once, but only one person at a time. This adds strangeness to what is happening, creating even more questions. What is especially alarming is that those who joined later do not notice this. They just look at the overall indicators and do not pay attention to the small details. This looks very suspicious. We must report this to her ladyship. Although there is no evidence yet, everything that is happening seems strange, but we must proceed with caution. If they don't realize the importance of what's behind this, the situation will only get worse. We need to catch every participant to expose what's going on. The leader of the Blue Flame Squad is the spearman Vifera, and there is another strange moment that does not give rest. It is some hidden threat that needs to be found out. It's too early to tell the captain about this, so she decided that they would just observe to gather more information. She didn't want to rush to conclusions. The knights were shocked when they heard the vice captain's cry. There was a note of alarm in his voice, causing uneasiness among everyone. This was a sign of something wrong. The lady was on the verge of exhaustion. Her patience was almost exhausted. She had made her choice long ago, and this man was now in the blue flame, which created new problems. Sevilla Ventus is the youngest member of the Dark Knight, and her wind magic makes her special, but her age and inexperience could be a problem. Although she is clearly not an ordinary newcomer, she pays special attention to this child because he has a gift that others do not have. His wind magic abilities represent an important potential for the party. The attribute Jun used was perfect for archers. If Axion also helped, this combination would truly have a huge destructive power. With the right training, he will be an incredibly useful ally, and his abilities will greatly enhance the team. The reason why she didn't hear his name in the first round was most likely because he died when he first discovered his talent as a mage. Apparently, he fell victim to the Blue Flame Squad's connection, which led to his death. But she won't be able to help him now because the performance ceremony is scheduled only for next week. Now, she is a stranger to everyone, and any attempts to interfere in the affairs of the expedition will be regarded as an abuse of authority. Although perhaps something will happen to Seville in the dungeon this week, and her intervention will become necessary. June remembered the captain's words that if she helped destroy the Demon King, she could ask him for any help. At that moment, she realized that she had no choice and needed to act to achieve her goal. She came to the captain, and he asked why he should care about the fate of Seville Ventus. The lady explained that she had a great magical talent that was worth developing and protecting. Mayer seemed unaware of this and asked if June had realized this through her ability. The girl replied that she was not sure that the group was actually sacrificing this man, but the gentleman noted that her reasoning surprised him. She still hasn't found any evidence, but if they remain in the same composition, it could lead to the loss of a valuable person. She knew it would be impossible to fix, and the gentleman expressed doubt that the cause of death could have been due to insufficient skills. Mayer noted that it was strange that it was precisely those with talent who died, and this worried him greatly. He didn't understand who was behind this and what they should do in such a situation where there was clearly a hidden threat. Mayer abruptly stated that it was too dangerous and did not agree with the proposal, believing that it would be better to send someone else or forget about it altogether. The girl was shocked by his reaction. He himself asked her to report everything, and now he reacted so sharply. He acts like he doesn't care who she is, whether she's the vice captain or someone else. he doesn't care, and he doesn't show the slightest respect for her status. She is sure that even a 14-year-old child can die in such conditions, but she thinks that it is too cruel to take Sevilla out of the group. It is not an easy decision for her. However, there is no guarantee that even the strongest flame will not affect his condition. Fire can be dangerous for anyone, even the strongest. And the dungeons are always full of hidden dangers. Every move can be fatal. This place does not forgive the slightest mistake or carelessness. She will probably decide to go there without proper preparation because her life is extremely valuable to her. But there is determination in her eyes, and she is ready to take the risk. It seems that she already has a concrete plan of how she will proceed. She is clearly preparing herself to overcome all possible difficulties. The lady confirmed this, and he stated that in that case, he had his own conditions for her that would need to be met in order to move forward. The girl was surprised when he voiced his demands. She did not expect that everything would depend on some conditions on his part. In her understanding, the base and the territory are two different concepts. Although she sees something similar in them, these concepts are not actually identical. Owning a territory for her means managing the people who live there, their fates, their lives. That's what's important to her. It's not just land, it's lives. Owning a base, on the other hand, means managing the dungeons around it, as well as all the dungeons that are found in the surrounding area. This requires more control. The number of dungeons and their area are limited, unlike the number of groups, so some owners take a commission for clearing, giving it to other expeditions. Therefore, expedition owners do not always close dungeons themselves. Sometimes it is much more profitable to transfer the right to clear out to another group in order to make a profit. Because of this, many groups are trying to gain control of the base, but this does not apply to the Dark Knights. They already have a huge base in Noctinteria. Even if other groups want to get into one of the bases, no one will dare to demand a commission from them, since the Dark Knights have enormous power and influence. The Dark Knight was always the one to help you get through the most difficult and dangerous dungeons. He was a master who could master levels that no one else could overcome. So the Blue Flame group always had something to do. The next time they took part in a raid, which promised to be no less dangerous and interesting than the previous ones. It was all strange, but the echoes of the past had not yet passed a week. The problems had not disappeared by themselves, and every step brought them closer to the inevitable resolution of the situation. Everything happened exactly as she had expected. The plan she had laid out turned out to be correct, and now all that was left was to take the next logical step, which she had long thought about. An agreement had been reached with the gentleman, and now her task was to strictly follow the outlined plan without deviating from the intended line. When she met one man, she was surprised by his words. He thought that the vice captain would only steal from the newcomers, not knowing the whole truth about her intentions. She knew she would have to join another group to move forward. It was inevitable given the circumstances and her own goals. The man she encountered turned out to be the leader of the Blue Flames, Vifera. According to him, Vifera was a knight in the past, which added to his authority in their eyes. He earned respect among his own people, but he hid this part of his character. He usually did not demonstrate his softness, remaining tough and decisive in his actions. The lady said she had no intention of interfering, but her wish was different. She wanted to gain experience before assuming full rights to the position she sought. The man thought that her ambition might not be the most wise. He thought that 1 or 2 raids would not make her experienced enough for this world. The girl, in turn, confidently answered that the path, no matter how long it is, begins with the very first steps, and this step was important for her, despite the doubts of others. He argued as much as he wanted, but he still understood that she would go her own way, and every step she took brought her closer to success, despite all the obstacles. Vifera couldn't understand why his group had been chosen for protection. They didn't have the resources to guard a support mage, but apparently the others had their own reasons for this choice. Blue flames attack the dungeon, which is on the low and medium difficulty level. This is a perfect chance for the girl. She will definitely be able to survive in these conditions. But his hostility makes her uneasy. It's as if he can't stand her presence, which leaves a strange feeling of dissatisfaction in the air, as if she were a stranger to him. He is clearly not happy with her being here. His looks are full of hostility, which makes her feel uncomfortable. This aggression becomes a big problem for her. The dungeon isn't really that difficult, and she's perfectly capable of handling it. But his behavior and constant hostility create unnecessary tension in the situation. She noticed that the commander was experienced, and this gave her confidence. He was not a newbie, and there was no need to be too modest in such a matter, especially with such skills. The gentleman asked if the priest Augustus would go with them, but the lady was not really sure. The question seemed strange, as if it hid something important, not quite clear. Vafera, in turn, expressed doubt. He was not joking when he said that they would not be able to protect her. This underlines the complexity of the situation and its danger for the girl. In the first dungeon, she had Axion the fire mage with her. Back then they could quickly clear all obstacles, thanks to his incredible power, but now there is no such advantage. They don't have that ability now, and she knows it's going to be much harder to deal with. Without magical support, the situation is getting worse, which is worrying. Clearing the dungeon and worrying about her safety at the same time will be extremely difficult. Even with a high-level priest, this will be a real problem. The situation is really tense. She might die, and that's part of the risk she has to take. She has to understand that the consequences can be tragic, and the chance of survival is not always high. It's as clear as day, and she can't shake the feeling that this question is being asked only to show that no one is responsible for her death. If so, then she has decided that she will defend herself. There is no need to worry about her, because she is confident in her abilities and is ready to take responsibility for her decisions. If she overestimates her strength and dies, then only she will be to blame. It is her choice, her mistake, and she accepts it, understanding that the consequences are inevitable. The gentleman was pleased with her decision and asked if she would take back her words. The girl replied that she was even ready to write it down, showing that her decision was firm. In the dungeon, the man will be in charge of everything, and the girl will be obliged to obey his orders, not having the right to make her own decisions. Everything will depend on his will. The girl, looking into his eyes, declared that she was ready to fulfill the conditions and swore that she would be faithful to the agreement. This was important to her, and he accepted her oath. The man announced that they would set out early the next morning, without wasting any time. He had already prepared everything, and there was no time left for delay. She noticed how anger was pouring out of his eyes. It was obvious he was not hiding his mood. It was clear that he was serious. But maybe it's even better than his empty smile, which would hide his real intentions. It's easier to provoke. Moreover, she could play on his aggression. This would speed up the process, and their dark plan would soon be revealed. She just had to act quickly. The man said that they would first have to introduce them to new faces. Since the team had expanded, he wanted everyone to know each other. He explained that Captain Jun was a precious mage who had become vice captain. Her reputation was important to their goals. That was what the rumors said. And although the rumors are sometimes exaggerated, they had to show that they were trustworthy. They had to try not to let them down and not lose face. His ironic smile was noticeable on his face. He clearly did not hide his attitude to what was happening. This said a lot. He also introduced Seville, who would now replace the archer Yaga, who had died in the previous raid. He was a new member of their group. The boy asked Alain to take care of the necessary point that required attention. This was an important point in their further strategy. The answer was cold, and then the gentleman asked if the killer had any problems, anything that could affect their plans. The girl replied that everything was fine, but he asked again if there was anything wrong with him addressing her informally. He admitted that he always treated all his subordinates like that, but God said that he shouldn't worry. Everything would be fine. He could relax. She understood that sincerity was vital in their situation. To survive in the dungeon, you had to trust and be open about your intentions. He was glad she was quickly understanding the situation. They were all suspicious and prepared for possible exposure, but for now it wasn't their problem. Now he was confident that everything would go smoothly, without major obstacles. He believed that their plan would work if they acted decisively. During the mission, the man discussed how this time would be easier than previous times. He felt they were better prepared. Last time there were many more problems, and they made the task much more difficult. This time was easier than they expected, and more successful. In this team, they were really strong, which gave confidence that they would cope with all difficulties, and nothing bad was supposed to happen. In difficult times, people should support each other. This is undeniable, because it is mutual support that helps overcome difficulties. But the girl felt that this group could cope without her participation, so she decided to stay nearby to observe the situation and keep her distance. The man shouted that the support mage should stay away, as her presence would only hinder them and not help them, as she apparently intended. He couldn't understand how such a person could even become vice captain, because they were clearly all crazy here and acting completely illogically. The girl was worried that he would begin to suspect her true intentions, but perhaps it was even better than if he had understood everything at once. One had only to look to understand that the relationship between them could change at any moment, and there was nothing unexpected about it. Mayer made it clear that he supported her, and they didn't even think about the consequences of their behavior acting impulsively. The situation was becoming increasingly tense. The relationship was becoming increasingly rough, and this did not bode well. Now it was completely obvious that they would try to kill her right in this dungeon, and there was no point in hiding it. In a strange way, she felt better, because when everything is so obvious, it becomes easier to act than when there are doubts. This betrayal was obvious, but what worried her most was the archer Selvia, who was showing aggression. She thought that expressing anger as openly as he did was wrong. It seemed too obvious and dangerous. If this continued, she was sure he would definitely shoot Vifera, and she hoped that he would manage to restrain himself a little. She turned to Selvia, asking him to calm down a little so that the situation would not get out of control and they could move forward, while Farah shouted at them not to waste time, for every moment was important, and they could not afford to hesitate. The man even pushed the girl in the back, which she perceived as an extreme display of aggression that went beyond all limits. She was convinced that this was too much, and such an act could not be left without consequences. He mockingly asked why she was looking at him so intently and what she didn't like about what was happening. The girl replied that the evidence was not yet sufficient, so she needed to wait a little before taking any action. She noticed that Selvia looked very irritated. His anger was becoming more and more obvious, and this worried her. She didn't understand what was making him so angry, because he had never shown such anger before. But she didn't want him to make any hasty decisions, because if he lost his temper, her plan could fall apart. If he couldn't hold back and control his emotions, she knew their whole venture could end right now. So she grabbed his hand and thanked him for supporting her so decisively and not leaving her alone. However, he pulled his hand away, causing her to lose her balance and almost fall, which was an unexpected and painful moment for her. Wafer smiled as he saw her fall, and the boy in turn was stunned by what was happening, not expecting such a turn of events. Wafera couldn't understand how she was so weak that she fell to the ground so easily. It seemed unnatural, because she had always been strong. June knew she couldn't afford to get angry at times like these. She had to stay cool so she wouldn't lose control of the situation and hurt herself even more. They continued walking, oblivious to her difficulties. They seemed unaware that anything was wrong with her, and they walked faster and faster, leaving her far behind. The girl couldn't understand why she felt like a failed instrument meant only to suffer. She tried to hold on, but her strength was leaving her. June's gaze fell on the approaching end of the raid. and she felt a sense of relief. Having found herself on the brink of this ordeal, she knew it would soon be over. The vice captain couldn't stand aside. Either she had to intervene in what was happening. The moment had come when it was her turn to act. All this time, June hid behind the backs of her comrades, trying not to attract attention. But the moment came when she needed to stop hiding and show herself. The man told her it was time to do something useful. He couldn't stand her standing aside while everyone else was fighting and taking risks. She didn't quite understand what he meant when he spoke of her special role. The words confused her, and she couldn't understand what he was talking about. Then the man said that soon she would understand what and how to do. He was sure that she would realize her importance to the group as soon as she was ready for action. He took up the blade, known as Retribution. The magic emanating from this weapon was very powerful and brought immediate consequences in combat. June stood up, feeling her body become stronger. The attack boost magic had taken effect, and she now felt much more confident than before. She was hurt. Although the pain was intense, it was part of the plan. As the magic supported her and increased her strength despite the injuries she had received, she realized that the magic the man used was support magic, meaning that her injuries only enhanced her fighting ability, preventing her from falling. The man asked her in surprise if she was surprised by his actions. He thought she should have expected this turn of events, but she didn't seem to be expecting it. June knew that he was actually a support mage. Although it was not mentioned in the documents, she understood that hiding it was part of his strategy. Although her information window didn't hide the truth, she knew he hadn't revealed his powers on purpose. He didn't want his ability to affect the perception of his group. The man's gray hair was nothing out of the ordinary. It didn't attract attention because such hair was quite common among mages. It took her a moment to realize what surprised her the most. She thought it was the support magic, but in reality, she was shocked by his ability to hide his actions. She couldn't believe that he was the kind of person who was willing to hide important information from his comrades, and at the same time, use them for his own purposes. It all seemed even stranger, especially considering how he could manipulate the group. I wonder what Saint Marianne would say if she knew about this. The man calmly explained that his actions were not the result of malicious intent. He simply believed that magic was an applied science, and sometimes the truth had to be hidden for its effectiveness. He turned to the vice captain, asking if she realized the situation they were in. The situation was critical, and she had to understand that. He assured her that if the target of the spell was damaged, it would become stronger, and it would bear fruit. It was part of his plan, which was becoming clearer. Based on what he had already done, his intentions were obvious. Nothing was accidental. Every step he took led to a specific goal that he was striving for. The girl, looking at what was happening, realized that he was probably going to kill her. She sensed danger and immediately realized how the situation was developing. She said that she now understood exactly what they were planning, and it didn't surprise her at all. She was ready to accept what they had to do, but she remained calm. At the same time, she asked him not to take everything that was happening as a personal insult. For her, it was not something personal, but rather an inevitable step. She admitted that their squad was strong enough to carry out the task, but she did not understand why they were sent to make sacrifices. They could have done it without unnecessary losses. The man replied that no one had said that the entire squad would participate in the battle. He meant that the decision should be made by those who were ready to sacrifice themselves. He added that in this case, experience points would be distributed among all participants. This allowed everyone to contribute to the victory, albeit in different ways. The girl was completely shocked to hear that in the great battle of Holy Dialogue, the experience for winning is given, depending on the contribution of each participant. This was a new approach for her. Vifra would hardly be able to defeat him alone, but if he sacrificed someone, he would gain a power-up and be able to take all the experience points for himself, leaving the rest behind. She was shocked to realize that he was willing to kill people for the sake of experience. It was unimaginable to her, and she couldn't understand how he could do such a thing. He said that she was dumber than he thought and could not see things from a broader perspective. He intended to use her to grow his power to defeat the Demon King. He added that in order to defeat the Demon King, it was necessary to sacrifice the minority for the majority, and that was how the world worked. It was a cruel but necessary decision. The girl wondered how many people he had buried, following such stupid motives. She could not imagine how many sacrifices had been made for his ambitions. She remembered his actions in the first round and realized that this was nothing new to him. She began to understand why the other members of the squad were still helping him with this. She realized that the reward for closing the dungeon was not only money, but also items from the bodies of the dead. This discovery was unexpected, but quite logical. After dividing the spoils, the Vifera took the experience, while the others received gold. Everyone knew that this was a common practice among such groups, but everyone remained with their share. Now everything became clear. Their motives were very specific. Vifera did not hate June Carentia, which was unexpected for everyone. On the contrary, she even felt some sympathy for June, who was the same support magic as herself. This strange feeling gave them some kind of connection. Vifera knew their abilities were limited. He couldn't understand for a long time how such weak mages could have any significance in a world where strength was important. And then one day, having accidentally discovered a magical talent, he was delighted but soon fell into despair, realizing that his abilities consisted only of support, magic. However, later it dawned on him that this was not an accident. It was God's plan, and he began to perceive his abilities completely differently. The gods did not care what methods man used to achieve his goals. This discovery greatly changed his view of the world and his capabilities. That's why he didn't strive to become a powerful fire mage, because support magic was also useful. Its capabilities helped to develop, although not immediately. He was chosen as a hero precisely for this magic. However, many did not understand how he could be useful in large battles, since his abilities were not obvious. She couldn't do anything important that would help in the battle. However, when he grabbed her arm, she felt pain. That's when he realized her weakness. He noted that she became captain through the same dirty methods that others used, and this made him wonder about her true motives. Support mages could not use attack or defense magic, and even healing was unavailable to them. This made them unique, but also limited. However, they could learn techniques that went beyond normal fighting techniques, becoming masters of trickery and manipulation. This wide range of tricks and ruses became their main tool for defending the dungeon. All of this was indirect help, but extremely effective at the right moment. Mages who lack the ability to defend or attack are despised by everyone else. Their existence is essentially meaningless, since they cannot help in combat or defense. Even Vifera, a support mage who used her abilities to enhance her own strength, could not find anything worthwhile in them. She was disappointed in their uselessness. But despite their common flaws, their similarities end here. Each has their own methods and goals, even if the end result is the same. They remain support mages. There is no justification for killing innocent people, and it is precisely this kind of action that makes support mages useless and unrecognized. This is a harsh truth that is difficult to accept. She warned him not to use her as an excuse for his actions. She would not be content to be a pawn in someone else's game. That was not what she expected from her allies. She had ended up in the squad because of her talent, and it had stunned him. For a man who was used to seeing people by other criteria, this turn of events had come as a complete surprise. He smiled surprised at how she continued to deceive herself. Her words were so naive that they seemed to be spoken by a small puppy who did not understand the danger. But there was truth in her words. They were both support mages, and although he could have been more cruel, he gave her a chance, understanding that in such a situation, solidarity could not be rejected. She had to choose. He grabbed the hand of the boy Seville, showing that her decision now had serious consequences. Before her was a choice on which their fate depended. The man offered her two options: either become his ally and work for him, or sacrifice herself for another. It was a choice that left no room for compromise. He clearly didn't think she was smart enough to understand the gravity of the situation. He may have been wrong, but his belief in her weakness made her doubt her own fortitude. If she chooses the first option, he will receive in her a faithful assistant who will serve him like a puppet, carrying out all his orders, even if they are cruel. And if she refused, he would show no mercy and simply kill them both. In his eyes, she was just a pawn, and he was ready to destroy her, as well as anyone else who stood in his way. She couldn't understand where he got such a high opinion of his powers and trust in the situation. After all, if she revealed all his secrets, his reputation would be destroyed. He noticed her doubt and noted that she did not believe his words. She was a newcomer just joining the squad, and he was an experienced knight with his own reputation. He was sure that no one would believe her. They would most likely side with him because his experience and status as a knight of good repute spoke volumes. She shouldn't try to play naive. She was furious, but he calmly told her she should think about it. It was in his eyes a good option. He was giving her a chance, but there was a threat hidden in the offer that she couldn't ignore. She didn't have a good reputation in the Dark Knight, and her status as a support master was on the back burner. Her role was almost invisible, and she didn't even think that she could ever become a vice captain. It was hard to imagine. However, the man offered to help her use the blue flame. He was wrong to think that support mages were not that useful. In fact, they were much more important than many would assume. The man, realizing his mistake, admitted that he was wrong. If trash could be considered useful, then his words would have some meaning. But in fact, his opinion turned out to be superficial. When the girl expressed doubt about his words, she said that he wouldn't dare say such a thing if he tried to understand her work even a little. Her knowledge of support magic didn't allow her to use it so casually. She understood that support magic had to be used with precision and care, not simply as a tool for destruction. It required far more attention than he could have imagined. Therefore, she stated that he should not even try to claim that he could be among those who use such magic. She was ashamed of his underestimation of this important area. All eyes in the room were on him. The man, sensing the tension, said that she seemed to have chosen a path that would lead to her death. It was a threatening statement. The girl was not going to give in. She said that despite everything, he agreed to act in this way. After that, she felt a lot of pain and seemed ready to fall. The man said that she would not have to be bored alone, as an archer would be sent after her to finish it. His words sounded like a sentence, as if she was already doomed. The girl sharply objected and shouted that the captain would not leave it like that. She was sure that he would not allow her to be treated like that, especially if it concerned her life. The man only noticed that the captain was only concerned about the closure of the dungeon. He didn't care about anything else. Her fate wasn't that important to him. He added that she shouldn't worry about her future. Everything will resolve itself, and her life will no longer matter in the overall context. He was going to tell the captain that she had been killed by monsters, as if it were a normal incident. It seemed to him a simple and familiar outcome for such situations. But after a few seconds, when everything remained the same, the girl realized that nothing had happened. Everything was calm around her, and her life was still going on. When she opened her eyes, she saw that Sevilla had stopped the man. It was an unexpected turn of events. She couldn't understand how he had managed to intervene. The man couldn't believe that the boy would dare to do such a thing. He was furious, but then he turned to June, trying to understand how it could have ended like this. He asked her if she understood the situation correctly, and if she really intended to give the signal if her life was in danger. It all seemed completely ridiculous. In an instant, Sevilla had transformed into Meyer. It was an unexpected transformation that made the situation even more complicated. The girl, feeling embarrassed, admitted that she needed more evidence. She was at a loss, not knowing how best to act in such a situation. A few days ago, in Mayer's office, the captain proposed an unexpected solution that left the girl dumbfounded. She couldn't believe that such a thing was possible. He told her not to argue and to prepare herself for dangerous trials. Augustus, a priest, was limited in his powers in relation to people. They decided that they had to go into the dungeon together. It was the only logical decision if they wanted to survive and get through all the threats. The captain was constantly busy trying to close the dungeon, which was the reason for her shock. She did not expect such a turn of events. Now the girl didn't know who would protect whom. Everything was becoming confusing, and her thoughts were jumbled. Who would actually be in more danger? Judging by his determined look, the captain was not going to change his mind. She felt that with his support, she would definitely be safer in this dangerous place. She said that the captain could do whatever he wanted, and although her words sounded calm inside, she was full of doubt and anxiety. Weaver was completely confused. He didn't understand what was going on and why the captain was here. The situation was extremely confusing for him. The captain's assistants were equally confused. They did not know what to do, and in their heads, only thoughts were spinning about what had happened to the young man. They all couldn't believe their eyes, because what was happening was not at all what they expected. It was beyond their understanding. She used transformation magic on the captain to make him take on the appearance of Seville. This was a necessary condition for the mission to be successful. To use such magic, the consent of the person was required, and the captain agreed without hesitation. He showed no signs of resistance and easily joined the group. There was a problem, however. The captain turned out to be a terrible actor. Their good fortune was that there was little information about his character. Attentive people might have noticed some discrepancies, but this time luck was on their side and no one suspected anything. Transformations of this kind were rare and difficult to learn. It was a difficult but necessary step to achieve the goal. Every mage they met along the way should have noticed her magical support, but thanks to June's plan, everything was brought to life without any unnecessary complications. Thanks to June's professionalism, who took on the role of the transformed form, they were able to outwit the Vifera. This was a decisive advantage. The captain said he had enough information about the man's crimes. He was going to use this information to achieve his goal. The man felt pain from the captain grabbing him. It was an unexpected and unpleasant development for him. The girl was in complete shock when she saw the captain's handprint on the man's body. This made her wonder what would happen next. It would have been best not to argue with Meyer at all, because his determination was unassailable. Every step he took was carefully thought out. The captain turned to the Viper and said that if he wanted to say something, he should do it now. The time for thinking was over. Weaver couldn't understand why things had turned out this way. The situation seemed too unexpected, and he didn't know what to do next. He shouted for everyone to grab this girl. He was ready to do everything to strengthen his master and defeat Meyer. His cries became louder and louder. He ordered her to be killed, believing that this way he could strengthen his master and win this battle. He was sure that this was the only way he could defeat Meyer. He hoped that the boost would be enough to win, but this was far from reality. June, not believing her ears, began to think that this was all just a joke. However, her intuition told her that it was not true. He wanted to kill her, to strengthen his powers, and fight Meyer. But even with such a power boost, his chances were extremely small. Even with a doubled attack, he was still weak, much weaker than Meyer, and could not deal with him on equal terms. His plan was doomed to fail. The captain smiled. He knew how strong Meyer was, and he couldn't help but feel confident. Nothing that happened surprised him. Viper screamed, trying to stop everyone. He was in a panic, realizing that they could all die if they did not make the right decision. He shouted again that Meyer was also a human, and that the vice captain had to be killed. She was just a support mage. She could be eliminated. He found himself in a state of agony, realizing that his life was coming to an end. The captain, in turn, said that he had nothing more to listen to. The girl approached him with a knife and noticed that he said that if he killed her, he would defeat Meyer. It sounded like a threat. He shouted at her, accusing her of bringing the captain. He was furious, thinking that she was now pretending to be ignorant. He promised to take her with him to the next world. It was the last thing he could say before the situation got out of control. The girl calmly replied that if all this was true, then she had been waiting for it for a long time. She was ready to deprive him of his last hope, doing everything to make him lose all faith. She asked him if he thought he could kill her, and then she asked him to look at her closely to see if there was more hidden in her eyes than he might think. Mayer was completely stunned by what was happening, and there was confusion in his voice as he began calling out to the girl, hoping that she would calm the situation down. He said this with alarm because he was sure that she had clearly gone crazy, and there was something incredibly strange in her behavior that he could not understand. However, the girl replied that she was completely fine in her right mind, and then Mayer asked her to show her hand to make sure that the wound she was talking about really existed. He looked at her hands, not seeing any traces of wounds. However, a wound appeared on Vifera's hands, and this cast doubt on everything. The man, despite all his confidence, could not understand how such a strange event could happen, which he could not explain in any way. He was confused, not understanding how all this was possible. The girl, not expecting him to understand, asked if he thought that one person could use support skills. She used her holy sacrifice as soon as she felt something was wrong. It was her decision, and she knew her future was at stake. The new support spell she was about to cast couldn't take effect while the active spell was still in effect. It all depended on how well she controlled the magic. The blade of vengeance that Vifera used against her lost its power because the holy sacrifice was activated. This was an unexpected turn of events for everyone. The boost he was counting on didn't work, and it was frustrating. He didn't know how to fix the situation when things weren't going according to plan. Mayer yelled at her, accusing her of doing everything wrong. But the girl, without losing her cool, noted that he was a support mage and should have understood this. She repeated his words sarcastically, which only made him even more angry, and he started yelling again, not knowing how to deal with it. Mayer turned to June and told her sternly not to try to cut herself again. He was concerned and didn't want her to do anything that would lead to more danger. The girl noted with a grin that she did not have such a hobby as self-destruction, and she was not going to repeat it. But the captain still expressed doubt and said that he needed to rethink his opinion of her. The girl, showing no fear, replied that she could say the same about him. Then the gentleman added that she was much more rational than he had expected, although in reality she was still stupid. The girl calmly explained that her decision was the most rational one possible, but Mayer could not accept that cutting himself with a knife could be a reasonable choice. He was against such an approach. She couldn't object to him because her actions really were a small revenge against Vifera, who had interfered so much with her work. Jun Carentia was furious that one of the team members intended to further tarnish the already dubious reputation of support mages. She was very irritated and literally wanted to remove him from this role. The situation required an immediate solution. However, the captain noticed that they could not continue in the same spirit and had reached a dead end. It was necessary to decide what to do next. Suddenly, a man approached them, saying that his subordinates had only carried out the orders of their commander. That was all he could explain. He claimed that they could not help but listen to the command in the dungeon, and now in a panic, he begged for mercy, not knowing what would happen next. Vifera, a woman from the group, intervened and said that they had decided to leave him here at this moment. The captain explained that the orders of the group's commanders must be followed, but only the orders of the expedition captain are of primary importance. Despite all this, they continued to beg for forgiveness, but the gentleman, who remained unperturbed, did not even listen to them. Easily obeying the order to kill an innocent, they ignored all orders, deciding their own fate without taking responsibility. Now they started shouting out ridiculous excuses, hoping that this would somehow change the situation and save them. The captain, taking his sword, declared that it was up to Jun Carentia to decide what to do with them. He was waiting for her decision. The punishment could be either in the dungeon or outside of it. Either way, the choice was entirely hers. The girl, after thinking about it, decided that she could punish them publicly to improve discipline in the group. but she understood that this was unlikely to help. In the dark night, this measure would most likely not have the desired effect, so she suggested drowning them in the river Styx, eliminating any witnesses. The idea was simple: no body, no case. Killing the witness, so as not to ruin the reputation of the entire expedition, was the most logical solution. The man, not understanding the seriousness of what was happening, could not believe that they dared to commit such an act, and tried to justify himself. Meanwhile, they were facing a fight with the Demon King, and they asked for another chance, hoping that it would somehow affect the situation. Mayor Knox, the leader of the Dark Knight, noted that some members of his squad did not seem to understand their role, and he was ashamed of his subordinates. June Carentia reassured him, saying that her opinion of the captain and his actions had already been formed, and nothing could change it. After this, the captain said that since she was allowed to decide, they would act according to her instructions, and this was the final word in the matter. Vifera, in turn, began to object, arguing that he had been chosen by God, and therefore could not be treated like that. But the captain did not pay attention to this. Then the girl, after thinking for a while, asked if it was worth using magic on this man. The captain said that perhaps it was not necessary, but if she wanted to gain experience, he could use it. Magic, enhanced powers, and experience depended on the input. June Carentia knew that even one spell could be useful. She couldn't miss such a chance, especially since her level was too low for the second round. This was a chance to improve her skills. She soon decided to use enhancement magic, knowing that it would help her in the future. The strengthening magic was the same as the one she used last time, and its effect was as expected. It would definitely strengthen her powers. The man realized that she had used magic to analyze people's strength, and asked how much stronger he had become after this spell. June Carentia replied that her spell only gave him a 10% boost, which was a fairly standard result. It was a common buff that was used frequently in the game and was indispensable for healing, and it served to improve strength. Support magic had its own value, and the higher the base stats, the stronger the effect of the boost. June had a high level of magic proficiency and could use the enhancement 3 times in a row, allowing her to increase her powers. She was ready to strengthen him even more if he needed it, but everything depended on his desire. The man, however, said that he thought it was enough. He also noted that Vifera had spoken of a possible doubling of the amplification. June noted that the Blade of Vengeance has certain limitations, but overall, it is a powerful weapon. It only works for the caster, and she partially understands why Vifera did what he did. She asked again what exactly such a large increase meant, even if it was a one-time thing. The gentleman explained that it was stronger than drugs, and it would not be easy to get rid of it. Such actions are absolutely unacceptable in their world. It violates the rules, and the consequences of such actions will always be serious. He added that everyone must answer for their sins. When he said this, it sounded as if Meyer was talking about his own actions. Mayer had to fight the boss alone, which was a tough test for him. He was strong, but the price of victory was high. He was killed in one blow, and even June didn't have time to support him. It was too fast, and she barely had time to understand what had happened. The power was astounding. June could hardly help but think that Meyer might have sold his soul to the devil for such power. When they came out, Augustus noticed their presence. He was glad to see the master and the vice captain, which showed his respect. June asked if everything was okay, and August confirmed that everything had gone according to plan, and they had completed the task successfully. The gentleman said that everything had happened as they had expected. Everything had gone according to plan, and now they could move on. Augustus noticed that he had doubts about using the grace of Saint Marianne for such purposes. He did not even know whether he should grieve about it. He found himself more worried about the unfair use of his powers than he was about death. The religion of this world was far from what June was used to. Many people believe that people should use magic responsibly, as it is considered a blessing from the gods. However, there have been many contradictions in this. Augustus's reaction was strange. The priest seemed unconcerned with the value of human life. He seemed far removed from simple moral norms. The gentleman said that everything was fine, and now it was all over. They had successfully completed the task, and everything was back to normal. Priest Augustus had to help heal the vice captain. She had been beaten and cut, and her condition required immediate attention. June didn't understand what the problem was, because she felt fine. However, the captain insisted that she ignore her own words. The captain told Augustus not to forget that great things were ahead of them. He emphasized the importance of their future tasks and said that time was of the essence. He also warned that he did not know what to do. If the vice captain continued to take such risks, it could affect their plans. June did not raise the issue. She considered it a waste of energy to treat a healthy person. But the captain was adamant in his decision. The captain said that her body was hers, but she should be a more responsible person and not risk her life, especially in such circumstances. Meyer is worried about her because he values her talent. He has invested a lot of effort in her and does not want to lose such an important member of the team. He asked again if she was listening to him, noting that they had a serious conversation to have when they returned from the raid, which she had not known about until now. June replied that she understood everything, and after clearing the dungeon for which the stronger flame was responsible, a secret meeting was to take place at the Dark Knight's base. The captain told her the whole story about the autumn flame, only after everyone had gathered for a meeting, and she understood the importance of what she had heard. He said that he was going to announce that Vifera attacked his subordinates because he was jealous of their strength, and that it would be an important moment for everyone. Axion noted that this was actually close to the truth, but it was decided to hide the fact that Vifera was a support mage so as not to create unnecessary stereotypes. Hiding this fact was to prevent negative influence on everyone, especially June, as people might start to suspect her magical abilities. Axion remarked that he did not understand how Vifera could have acquired such power at all, and he was left wondering why Saint Marianne had shown mercy to him. Augustus, however, said that the ways of the Lord are inscrutable, and then he thought that if the goddess blessed people for their humanity, many things might be different. He added that if Marianne had blessed everyone for their kindness, Axion would have undoubtedly received at least a drop of the magical talent that he clearly deserved. Axion replied that of course if people with good qualities were given power, he would definitely be one of those who deserved the most magical gift. They started arguing again, and the red-haired man decided to intervene because he knew that if they didn't stop, the situation could only get worse. He said that if they wanted to argue, they would do better to do it with their fists, since the main strength of the Lobor group was to resolve conflicts in combat. Axion asked him if he really wanted to fight this zombie, and Augustus replied that Saint Marianne would not approve of useless violence in such a situation. Despite Axion's magical gift, Augustus noted that he must learn to show at least a drop of gratitude for the abilities he received without losing himself. He noted that if the group had selected people based on their loyalty to the goddess, then only priests would have remained here. And June, hearing this, was surprised by his thoughts. June replied that she felt that all August priests were capable of defeating almost any enemy, which added confidence to future battles. Axion didn't understand how it was possible to find 6 more such priests, because they were so strong that it was almost impossible to create such personnel. June noted that it was indeed unlikely that such strength would be found, but she thought that in this situation, it would still be necessary to think about the right decision. Lobor noted that she spoke as if she wanted to create a copy of Augustus, and June, smiling, replied that it was not such an impossible task and she would think about it. The meeting was over, and they could go and rest, putting off all questions until tomorrow, when their strength would be restored and their thoughts clear. As they were leaving, the captain stopped June, and she, noticing his gaze, turned to him, feeling that something important was about to happen. The captain looked at her and remarked that if she had nothing important planned, he would like to offer her a drink in his office to celebrate her success. June was a little surprised that he asked her to have a drink, at such a late hour and alone with him because it was unexpected and a little tense. She felt embarrassed because drinking with Mayor Knox alone at such a time was an unexpected event, especially with the captain of the Dark Knight. She was nervous because this was not just a drink, but an evening in Mayor's company, which was undoubtedly unusual and could make her feel awkward. However, she replied that she did not mind, and that despite the late hour she liked to drink, but one glass would clearly not be enough for her to fully enjoy it. Usually the problem was drinking with the opposite sex at such late hours, especially if the situation was unclear, but this was different. However, if the girl was with Mayor Knox, that was a completely different story because his fame was known to many, and the relationship with him was different from the rest. His fame lay in his simplicity, and many girls more than once, trying to win his attention, encountered failure because Mayor was not inclined to these games. Rumors that June is allegedly Mayor's lover seem unfair, especially considering that the problem has already become obvious and will probably be revealed even more soon. June drinks, and with each sip, she opens up more and more to him, as if she is now ready to confess something important that she has been keeping inside. Despite this, June can drink quite a lot, and her body is accustomed to alcohol, so even such moments do not make her lose her composure. The main thing for her is to control herself, especially when she drinks, because this allows her not to lose touch with reality and not to do anything thoughtless. But on the other hand, Meyer has expensive and high-quality drinks at her disposal, and she is not so stupid as to miss the chance to enjoy them at such a moment. In any case, she skillfully avoids stupid situations and cannot help but appreciate the opportunities that open up before her. He invited her into his office, and June realized that this was a sign that the conversation could continue and that she could open up even more. Mayer noted that he had no idea that Vifera could be such a person in this situation, and this surprised him. Previously, Mayer always cared about his colleagues, and his attitude towards them was different. But with Vifera, everything turned out to be more complicated. June noticed that Vifera had changed a lot, and now it became clear to her why the gentleman did not know about his real condition. Perhaps her assumptions are correct, because his face does not change, but his voice has become more relaxed than usual, and she still wonders why he suddenly offered a drink. He probably wanted to feel the spirit of alcohol to talk to her, because most likely he does not have the opportunity to discuss such things with other people. Interestingly, June thought that Mayer didn't seem to care about Weaver at all, and didn't show much emotion about what was happening to him. He had no doubt that his judgment was correct, but despite this, she realized that this situation was still important to him, and he was worried more than she expected. June couldn't understand how the person who seemed invincible and the strongest to her could be so vulnerable in this situation. This came as a surprise to her, and she felt her heart fill with pity because she wanted to somehow comfort him. But the next second, she realized that her worries were unnecessary. He grabbed her by the throat, and at that moment, she was separated from the whole world by a powerful force. Everything that was happening reminded her of the moment when a person meets a wild animal, and she realized that one cannot worry too much despite everything that is happening. June couldn't understand why he was looking at her so persistently, and this made her feel uneasy and a little anxious. Meyer seemed to be waiting for an answer from her, so she quickly said that the dungeon was too cruel a place for an ordinary person to survive in it. She didn't know what kind of person Vifera was before, but the fact that he went crazy seemed natural to her. The dungeon can easily break even the strongest. In this place lives our lost, loved ones, and comrades perish, and step by step, a person gets used to the inevitable death, losing all fear of it. June. Carentia had long since learned to perceive the world as a game. Every day was like returning to a dungeon where she had to kill monsters and protect her life. In this world, she was accustomed to harsh rules and tough decisions without asking unnecessary questions. It is important to remember that not everyone who has been in the dungeon crosses the limit. The world where dangers lurk at every step is not as simple as it seems at first glance. Not everyone is able to pass it, and this is what distinguishes the survivors from the rest. Temptation, no matter how it manifests itself, always confronts a person at some point, but it is not necessarily open like a handshake. It is hidden and deceptive, makes you doubt your choices, but does not give clear instructions. And even though it may not seem strange, it doesn't mean it's true. It's easy to believe something when everyone else does it, but it's important to remember that there is no truth in what is considered normal. June noticed that the gentleman also agreed with this. He said that one cannot forgive actions that seem justified for the sake of gain. He himself did what the situation dictated, but that does not make his actions righteous. Despite this, the choice had been made, and it was inevitable. He was a weak man, and it was this weakness that led to what happened. The confrontation with reality was inevitable, and there was no escape from it. June believed that the gentleman should not worry about what had happened. She was sure that such moments could be lived through without thinking. Why waste energy on worries when there were many more important tasks ahead? It was obvious to her that the master would have to forget about this once it was over. His place was among the great, and he would have to look after the weak no matter how hard it was for him. Now his efforts were focused on surviving, despite all the difficulties. The gentleman continued to act with the last of his strength, despite the fact that there was very little of it. But there was no retreat anymore. The only right decision was to focus on becoming stronger than everyone else. Strength came with every step, and June understood that this was the only way the master could change his fate and the fate of those around him. The gentleman noted that perhaps she did not understand him completely. He claimed that he was not as strong as she thought. His doubts were clear, and he hoped that she would see in him not an ideal, but a person with his weaknesses. He also asked the question, what would she do if he did not live up to her expectations? It was important for him to know how she would react to possible disappointment, because he could not guarantee her an unconditional victory. When June was confused and didn't know what to say, he realized that she still thought he was strong. Her choice was connected to his strength, and that was obvious. But what if he couldn't be who she saw him as? Mayer added that she might want to go back to Fabian. June was shocked by these words, and it took her a moment to understand what he meant. He was clearly trying to test her affection and the extent of her involvement in what was happening. At these moments, June felt that she did not understand what the gentleman was talking about. He was again trying to delve into her thoughts to find out how ready she was to be with him, and not with someone else who could become her support. He was trying to figure out if she had feelings for Fabian. His words sounded like a test, and he himself knew very well how cunningly fate could be woven, especially when it came to such a complex relationship. As June reflected, she realized that although they were close, their bond was one of shared purpose rather than personal feelings. They did not reveal their weaknesses to each other, although they were drawn together from time to time by the need for support. Initially, June thought it was all just a temporary situation, just an excuse to have a drink together, but she soon realized that she was much more involved than she wanted. He had cleverly set up a situation to force her to open up after she had had enough alcohol. Everything was calculated to force her to confess. She felt offended and wanted to know whether she would pass on his secret or not, but she was not ready to listen to him. She began to understand the reasons why Mayer continued to question her, trying to find out more about her intentions and feelings. Even if she was betrayed, she remained loyal to Fabian, the hidden core of the Demon King. She still carried this heavy secret within her. She had to be careful with those around her, because she knew that her usefulness was important to them, especially in the future. To succeed in her plans, she needed to earn Mayer's trust, and she was willing to do so. She remembered the captain's words that she was a bad actress, and so she decided to tell the truth, asking if he was making fun of her now. Out of disappointment, she was ready to return to Fabian. Anger was seething inside her. She could not contain her emotions. In a fit of rage, she shouted that she had only betrayed the expedition once, and he thought they were the same as people without loyalty. Mayer immediately replied that he didn't think so. His words were confident and calm. She noted that if that were the case, he would not be asking her such questions, and in fact, he called her Fabian's dog, and she despised this comparison. She couldn't stand it when they called her that, but she couldn't do anything about it. She continued to do the best she could while being part of the expedition, and didn't understand why everyone kept attributing such thoughts to her. The captain apologized for his words at their first meeting, asking forgiveness for his harshness. She replied that she was different from him in her loyalty, and therefore accepted his apology, expecting that such moments would help them become stronger. She was surprised why he suddenly started asking such questions. Perhaps he was sacrificing the expedition members, as Vifera had done. The gentleman said that the situation was quite different, but the lady confidently stated that it did not matter to her. The captain invited her to join the expedition, and she agreed. But after some thought weighing the pros and cons, she chose the captain because his terms suited her, and they were already in the same boat, ready to go in the same direction. The captain had to defeat the Demon King if he wanted everything to go according to plan. He knew it wouldn't be easy. If the captain turns out to be not as strong as she thinks, she will not betray him, but on the contrary, she will make him stronger in order to help him. The gentleman was stunned by her words, did not know how to react to it. Complete confusion was visible in his eyes. He even asked again if she really wanted to make him stronger, not believing that she was capable of such actions. He was doubtful because it was hard to believe that a level 23 character would be able to strengthen someone who was at level 80. The girl smiled, asking if he thought she couldn't do it, her gaze confident and even a little mocking. She was sure it was possible because she had already studied his characteristics and was ready to face his weakness head-on. Knowing that Meyer was a ticking time bomb, turning into a demon king, she always expected the worst. She said that in any situation when she is involved in a game, she always gives her best, sparing no effort. Jun. Carentia was confident that she could be the perfect backup for the captain, even if he suddenly decided that he didn't want to fight the Demon King. She believed in her own strength. The girl was ready to support him, even if she had to act strictly. She would have simply sent him to the yard, and did not think that her name would remain in history. The gentleman agreed with her decision, but June began to doubt. He became quiet, and she realized that his silence was caused by something more than simple agreement. He got what he deserved, but now he was in a state of numbness. Everything that was happening around him seemed strange and a little uncertain to him. He was putting other people in awkward situations when he was drunk, but it was unclear why he was still holding her hand. It was hard to figure out what was driving him at that moment. June thought that maybe he would drink with her again, but she didn't say anything about it. After all, the alcohol was so good that it would be stupid to refuse it. She was ready to go out with him again, because this drink was just perfect, and it would be a mistake to refuse it, but there were doubts in her soul. Then the gentleman turned to her and said that she was an incredibly strong person. He noted that her strength was evident in any situation, and this could not fail to impress. June was surprised that he said this, as if they already knew each other. She couldn't understand where he got such thoughts from, because their meeting was so recent. The gentleman continued that they had indeed met before, and had noticed her talent from the very beginning. This was something unexpected for June. She had not expected such words. The girl was in complete shock, not understanding how this was possible. He explained that this is why he rushed to save her, because he noticed her abilities back then. June still couldn't believe his words. He continued that he saw her in the first round, although she only remembered that she was trying to kill him at that moment. He couldn't remember exactly which meeting it was. He had overheard the conversations of the Fabian expedition, and it had left a mark on his memory. They discussed the choice of dungeon, and it was unclear why Jun was hesitant. One of them argued that they should aim for Reikyo, and it was decided to go in that direction. Others thought that the water dungeon was not the best choice. It had its own characteristics that were opposite to Fabian's magic, and it created a danger for the entire group. June didn't understand why she had decided that, but she calmly explained that there was no need to worry about the water. She was sure she could handle it if she raised the level. She thought that her actions could level up, and it didn't matter how desperate she was. The main thing was progress and self-confidence. She tried to convince her companions that this wasn't a death march, but June knew that at level 60, a new magic skill would unlock, and that would change everything. He said that even if she reached level 60, it wouldn't change her abilities much. It would still be support magic, meaning it wouldn't be strong enough to fight demons. June, despite not leveling up, still had enough power to remain a valuable member of the expedition and help with its tasks. The girl, noticing the concern, turned to Daiko, reminding him that if June was so stubbornly insisting on her own, then there were probably good reasons for her decision. The guy, turning to April, expressed doubt, saying that if she continued to support June, she would not give in the end, but they had never made a mistake in following her advice. However, the guy was sure that their success in previous expeditions was more a result of luck and their personal talents, and not because of anything else. Fabian listened in silence, and Daiko added that although there were no serious consequences, no one could boast that everything went perfectly. There were always difficulties. Then June turned to Fabian, reminding him that her suggestions were never unfounded, and now it was important to her that her opinion be taken into account, and that they go to the dungeon she had spoken of. Fabian, however, was firm in his decision, and declared that this time they would head to a different dungeon, despite the girl's insistence. June was clearly upset, her voice shaking as she tried to convince him that their decision wouldn't be as risky as he thought. April, in turn, supported June, and tried to convince everyone to listen to her opinion, saying that her point of view deserved attention. After this, April couldn't take it anymore, and rushed after the guys, saying that they were behaving very rudely, not wanting to listen to others. Daisho responded calmly and asked April to calm down, explaining that this decision was made for the good of the entire expedition and not for personal interests. April was usually quite strict, and it was unclear to everyone why she was so soft with June, considering her tough stance towards everyone else. Meyer, observing what was happening, noted that although Fabian was indeed choosing between two dungeons, in the end, he made a firm decision to attack only one of them. Despite the silent support of the rest of the expedition, it was amazing to see how June did not give in and continued to protest against the decision she had made. He added that it should not be thought that he was spying on them, since they themselves were loudly discussing their plans, and he was simply nearby listening. June remembered that usually when they went on an expedition, she stayed behind watching the action. But in the case of this dungeon, things were different. The mage, who always tried to avoid arguments, was completely ignored, this time when he tried to express his opinion, stating that he knew nothing about the situation. The mage's opinion was not taken into account, but no one said that there was anything bad about it. However, the situation was tense enough to return to discussion. At the time, he had thought that he had always wanted to work with her, but he had no idea that they would be brought together in such a situation, with such decisions and consequences. If you think about it, the expedition that attacked the dungeon that June insisted on was an important milestone that determined the future of their group. The expedition was strengthened by the presence of the Dark Knight and an artifact found in the Raikyo dungeon that increased the participants' resistance to fire attacks. The Dark Knight, having mastered the artifact, has since used it for his own purposes, and now Axion could also use this powerful item in his battles. It would be useful for protecting participants from fire magic. Meyer already realized how useful this feature would be. He said that despite everything, she still had memories of the first round, and that it developed especially after she became the vice captain of the Dark Knight. June was annoyed, and he pretended to be drunk, trying to get her to open up by talking about his special relationship with the vice captain, which he talked about so much. She didn't know that this included getting drunk on expensive alcohol. She told him to never try to look at someone like that again, and that he had to understand that. The gentleman said he understood, and from that moment on, he trusted her completely. But it was a lie. He did not reveal to her what the core concealed. From now on, they will enjoy showing each other their cards. Perhaps everything will be revealed after some time. The girl said that she was already going to leave. He tried to stop her, stood up but began to stagger, and she got scared. He could have fallen on her, and she said that judging by his condition, he needed to be put to bed. He should hurry up and rest. But the gentleman said he would walk her to the door, and since he insisted, she agreed. She also noted that in any case she was grateful to him because they had drunk well today. He noted that she drinks well his defeat completely and utterly. The lady said that you reap what you sow. By the way, when they were standing so close, he seemed very tall. She felt a little awkward in this situation and was slightly embarrassed. Perhaps it was the lack of alcohol, but she wished she had another drink, noticing that his hair was falling apart. She wanted to correct them, but he grabbed her hand. She didn't understand what was happening and was very scared. He was also a little confused. The situation was completely unclear. June didn't even know what to say to him, didn't understand what was happening. She just wanted to fix his hair. The gentleman apologized and said that he was too sensitive. The girl replied that there really was nothing wrong with that. This time she had definitely crossed the line. It was truly absurd for a subordinate to touch his hair. Apparently she really is drunk. She said that she would say goodbye to him then, and the gentleman said goodbye to her. It seemed that he was tired of her. She wondered what emotions he was looking at her with, but at the same time she didn't want to know. That's why she found it until the end, without looking back. The next day the news spread among the dark nights, and it was like a shock. The blue lights became a symbol of this incident. Everyone was discussing how this guy, Vifera, who was trusted by his comrades, betrayed them by turning against them at the most unexpected moment. His lordship was in a depressed state, angry, and unable to believe what was happening. It was the first time he had been seen like this. Perhaps there were other circumstances at play, but the situation was too complex to understand right away. If they did fall out of favor, the consequences could be catastrophic, so they had to be careful. June thought it was just a hangover. She thought his condition was nothing more than a consequence of the previous night's excessive drinking. At that moment someone called her, and she turned to look. It was Axion, and Jun was a little surprised by his appearance, not expecting him to approach. He said that after the meeting, he heard her drinking with his lordship, and specified that she shared this with him. June confirmed that they had only had one glass each, to which Axion remarked that this was important. It meant she had won his trust. The girl was a little stunned and said that she didn't know about it because it was all so insignificant and accidental. She explained that they were simply drinking, but Axion replied that his lordship would not drink with someone without a reason, especially alone. The girl realized that this was precisely why she poured herself a drink, not expecting it to have such meaning. He added that despite the fact that they were drinking together, work with his lordship still continued to proceed as normal. Axion believed that this could be her chance, a chance to start a new life, and his lordship had no intention of interfering with her at all. Jun felt a strange but pleasant feeling from Axion's words, and replied that she did not need compliments and did not plan to accept his participation. He continued anyway, not understanding why she was so distant. Even the priest Augustus would go to a special squad and develop her abilities. This unit was designed to improve and develop certain skills. Rumors of its creation began to spread during the talent selection. Jun couldn't understand why Axion was so interested, but he clearly wanted to take the chance to become stronger and better in this squad. She said that the priest Augustus would go according to the captain's decision and noted his strength, but Axion assured her that he would be able to control him. June advised him to simply keep an eye on the Red Wolves squad to make sure everything went according to plan and without any unnecessary interference. Axion said that he had such a talent that he could handle several tasks at once without losing concentration. The lady reacted coldly to this and said that he should concentrate and reveal his full potential without unnecessary haste. Axion, somewhat upset, admitted that he thought his plan would work, especially if it affected her while she was hungover when even her ladyship was in that state. He didn't think he had drunk too much, but the lady clarified that she had only drunk in moderation, without any unnecessary difficulties. Axion didn't quite understand what was happening, and didn't know whether such a reaction should be taken as normal for an ordinary person. At that moment, Lober came up to them, and interested asked if she knew how to drink. He was surprised that their vice captain had such skill. He was genuinely glad to hear this, and suggested that they have a drink together later if they wanted. He regretted that they had not discussed this at the meeting, and now Lober had brought it up first. Lober was an Oak tribe, a renowned warrior in the Dark Night. She had excellent defensive skills that she had honed over the years, and if they got close, she would be able to help them further. Axion reminded him that it was better to be careful, because if he drank with his sister, it would end badly for him, and he would suffer greatly. Lober laughed and smirked, noting that a true warrior of the great Logotan must be able to drink like all knights. June realized that she had come for a drinking buddy. There are really few people who love alcohol and know how to drink wisely. They can be counted on the fingers of one hand. June, feeling the mood, said that she also liked to drink Lober. In turn, was sure that this red-haired man would definitely be suitable for such a thing. June added that Lober suggested they have a drink later, but she thought now was the right time for it. Lober agreed to this, but Axion expressed doubt and suggested that they stop reminding them that she had been drinking with his lordship yesterday and was planning to do so again today. June noted that yesterday's alcohol was already in the past, and now was a new day, and Lober supported this idea, suggesting to strengthen female friendship. Axion tried to intervene again and said that he would be with them to prevent them from drinking too much. In the evening, August could not understand what was happening at all and was clearly puzzled by what was happening. He asked them to explain this strange situation because he had absolutely no idea what was going on. Lober, without hesitation, invited the priest to drink with them. Augustus was angry because he devoted himself to service and did not approve of such entertainment. He reminded him that it was his duty to thank God, and that such actions as drunkenness were a sin to which he could not but object. This was said with grave insistence, and Lober suggested ending the conversation there and at least tidying up the room a little. At this point, Axion was already very drunk, and suddenly they heard strange sounds that abruptly disrupted the atmosphere of fun. August expressed concern that June would not fall under the influence of Sister Lober, believing it to be unsafe for her. He clarified that his sister only holds the position of vice captain of the Dark Knight and does not have much influence. June, surprised by his words, asked if he approved of her candidacy for the post of Vice Captain. August replied that he saw no reason to revoke her abilities. He noted that he is not actually the one making the decision on her appointment to this post. It was the first time August mentioned her name in the context of the vice president. He softened a little, and June felt relieved by his words. She was glad to hear his support. August added that the public would soon change its opinion about her merits and talents. June was not conceited by the benefits she received from St. Marianne and continued to train hard. He blessed her with the saint's name. Now June realized why August always kept his distance. It wasn't because of her status as a support mage, but because of his attitude towards their classes. Mages rely only on facts, and Augustus protects what is truly important to him. August turned out to be even more religious than she expected. Ultimately, his loyalty makes him a great partner for Meyer. Meyer may not be as religious, but something about Augustus still draws him in. June decided that she needed to know more about the reasons for such a connection between them.